She dove into the wrong SUV. The right life was already waiting inside. Jasmine Brooks ran 3 blocks in liquid gold satin and nude heels. Senior M&A analyst, 29, black, breath shallow, handbag pressed against her ribs. Behind her, Logan Hayes pushed through the lunch crowd. Leather jacket, white tee, the same possessive eyes she'd left behind a year ago. She saw a black armored SUV at the curb, engine on, tinted glass. She thought Uber. She dove into the back seat. The door sealed behind her with a weight that wasn't standard. Cream leather, sandalwood, a man beside her with a tablet on his lap, black shirt, 2 buttons open. Down the left side of his neck, a black serpent dragon tattoo curled toward the collarbone. He didn't look up at her. He looked through the tinted window at Logan. That was Cha Jun-so, Oyabun of the Seishore Ryu, 6'4". Calm the way deep water is calm. Logan saw the SUV. Logan saw the man inside. The color left his face. He took 3 steps back. Jun-so smiled. Just once. Then the central lock clicked. Loud, final. He set the tablet down and finally turned to her. "You got into the wrong car," he said, "but the right life." The driver pulled away from the curb. She didn't know yet that he'd been watching her for 6 months. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The liquid gold satin clung to her thighs as Jasmine Brooks broke into a full sprint across Madison Avenue, one nude sandal scraping the curb, the other catching air. The midday sun bounced off the glass towers and turned the sidewalk into a corridor of white fire. She kept her chin down. She kept her bag pressed against her ribs. She did not look back, because looking back was permission, and she had stopped giving Logan Hayes permission 6 months ago. Behind her, his voice cut through the lunch crowd. Jasmine, don't do this. Don't make a scene." He always said that. He always made the scene himself and then accused her of being the one making it. She slid between 2 suited men carrying coffee, mumbled an apology, kept moving. Her phone buzzed against her palm. The Uber app pulsed a blue dot 2 blocks ahead. Black SUV, 3 minutes. She had been counting down to those 3 minutes since she left the restaurant. The restaurant had been a mistake. She had agreed to 1 coffee, 1 civil conversation, 1 final closure for the sake of mutual friends who kept asking whether she was okay. Logan had ordered champagne. Logan had reached for her wrist across the table. Logan had said, with that small, tight smile he wore when he was about to ruin an evening, that he had spoken to her boss, that he had explained to her boss what kind of woman she really was. She had stood up so fast the chair tipped. The champagne flute rocked. She had walked out of the restaurant calm. She had broken into a run the second the brass door closed behind her. Now her lungs were burning. She crossed against the light. A yellow cab leaned on its horn. She lifted 1 palm in apology without slowing, and the heel of her sandal twisted on a manhole cover, and for a sickening half-second she was airborne, and then she was upright again, and the gold satin had ridden up her thigh, and she yanked it down and kept running. Jasmine. He was closer now. He was faster than she remembered. He had been a college lacrosse player. He still ran 3 mornings a week. She used to find it impressive. She used to find a lot of things impressive that turned out to be warnings she had decided to read as charm. She turned the corner onto Park. The block opened in front of her like a postage stamp of money. Cartier on the left, a private gallery on the right with no name on the door, only a single black orchid in the window, a bellhop in white gloves opening a town car for an elderly woman in pearls. And there, halfway down the block, parked against the curb between a delivery van and a fire hydrant, the SUV. Black, glossy, tinted to a depth that swallowed the reflection of the buildings instead of mirroring them. Her thumb stabbed the app. The blue dot pulsed on top of the icon on her screen. 3 blocks of running and her brain registered only the shape, the color, the curb. SUV, black, here, now. She did not check the license plate. She did not check the driver. She did not look at the windshield. She grabbed the back door handle with both hands, threw her shoulder against the door, and tumbled inside. The door swung shut behind her of its own weight. The street noise vanished. The first thing she noticed was the silence. Not the muffled hush of a normal car interior, but a real, dense, padded silence. The kind you only got behind glass that was thicker than glass had any reason to be. The second thing she noticed was the smell. Sandalwood. Warm, dry, expensive. Not air freshener, not cologne. Wood, somewhere, slowly being asked to be the smell of the room. The third thing she noticed was the man. He was sitting on the far side of the back seat. He was sitting the way some men sit on subway cars, taking up all the room he wanted with no apology. Except, this was not a subway car. This was cream leather, buttoned in a pattern she did not recognize, and his right ankle rested on his left knee, and a slim black tablet rested flat on his thigh, and his attention was entirely on whatever document was lit up on the screen. He had not looked up when she fell in. He did not look up now. "I'm so sorry," she said. The words came out fast and uneven, her chest still climbing for air. "I'm so sorry. I thought," the app said, "this is the wrong... Oh my God, this is your car. I am so sorry. I'll get out right now." She reached for the handle. The handle did not move. It was the smallest sound, a soft, single, almost polite click somewhere in the architecture of the door. She heard it more in her sternum than in her ears. She tried the handle again. It moved a quarter inch and stopped, as if the mechanism beneath it had simply decided not to participate. She lifted her eyes. He was looking at her now. She forgot, for one full second, how to breathe in. He was Korean. He was tall even sitting down, the way she could see from how his shoulders pressed against the headrest, how his knee rose above the line of the door panel. His hair was very dark and combed straight back from his forehead, with the kind of careful weight that suggested it had been done with hands, not product. His face was symmetrical in the way that made symmetry look like deliberate architecture. His jaw was sharp. His mouth was a flat, patient line. What stopped her was the calm in his eyes. She had spent 6 months learning the look of a man who was hiding how angry he was. She had spent the last hour learning the look of a man who was hiding how dangerous he was about to become. This man was hiding nothing. This man had the eyes of someone listening to weather on the radio. And down the left side of his neck, climbing out from under the open collar of a black shirt, was a tattoo. Black ink. A serpent body coiling, scales fine as printed text, the tail curling onto the smooth ridge of his collarbone, the head disappearing up under the angle of his jaw. The kind of tattoo that, on most men, would look like a costume. On him, it looked like a birthmark, like something the skin had decided on its own. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone. The sleeves were rolled to his forearms, a thin watch on his left wrist. No rings, no chains, nothing loud. He set the tablet aside. "Please," she said. Her voice had dropped a register without asking her permission. "I made a mistake. I'm so sorry." He did not answer. He did not move. He turned his head, slowly, toward the tinted window on his side, and looked out. Jasmine, against every instinct in her body, followed his gaze. The street looked the same, the doorman, the orchid, the fire hydrant a few feet ahead, and there, on the corner she had just rounded, half a beat behind her panic, Logan. Logan had stopped running. He was standing with his hands on his hips, chest heaving, scanning the block. The black leather jacket was open. The white tee was damp under the collar. His gray-blue eyes were sweeping the parked cars like a man reading a parking lot for an enemy he already knew. He took 2 more steps forward. He saw the SUV. His expression changed. It was not gradual. It was a single switch. The arrogance fell out of him like water through a sieve. His mouth opened a quarter inch. The flush in his face drained downward and left a gray behind. He took 1 step back, then another, then a third. The third was a half step, like his body had not finished telling his foot to move. He looked at the SUV. He looked at the tinted window. He could not see in, but he had seen the car. He had seen, somehow, the man behind the glass. And he was leaving. He was already turning. He was already walking very fast in the other direction, then almost jogging, then jogging properly, his head down, one hand fumbling at his back pocket for his phone, the leather jacket flaring behind him like a panicked flag. He did not look back. Jasmine watched until the corner ate him. She turned, slowly, to the man beside her. He had not stopped looking out the window. He was watching Logan go. And then, in the cream leather quiet of that back seat, while the sandalwood pressed gently against her sinuses and her own heartbeat thumped against the satin at her throat, he did something she did not expect. He smiled. It was a small smile. Barely a movement, the corner of his mouth lifted maybe a quarter inch. His eyes did not change. The smile did not warm anything. It was the kind of smile a man makes when something he has been waiting for has finally arrived on time. She heard her own swallow. "Please," she said again. The word sounded thinner now, like she had borrowed it from a smaller body. "Please open the door." He did not look at her. He reached forward, between the front seats, and pressed one finger to a small panel set into the console. The panel made the same soft click she had heard before, only this time it was louder, because she was listening for it. Central locks. All four. Sealed. He sat back. He turned to her. "You got into the wrong car," he said. His English was unaccented in the way that only people who have lived in more than one country at a high level get unaccented. The voice was low. It was steady. It was the same voice she imagined he used to ask for the wine list. "But," he said, "the right life." She stared at him. "That man," he said, lifting his chin 1 millimeter in the direction of the corner, "will never bother you again, because from this moment on, you are my exclusive passenger." He picked up the tablet again. He tapped the glass. Up front, behind the partition, the engine note shifted from idle to something deeper and immediate. The SUV pulled smoothly away from the curb. The fire hydrant slid past the window. The bellhop in white gloves did not look up. The orchid in the gallery window watched her leave without comment. Jasmine Brooks, 29 years old, senior mergers and acquisitions analyst at one of the most aggressive corporate law firms in Manhattan, valedictorian at Spelman, the woman who had once stared down a 60-year-old hedge fund CEO across a conference table and told him his valuation model was creative fiction, sat in liquid gold satin in the back of a stranger's armored car and did not say a single word. She was not, in that moment, afraid the way she had been afraid on the sidewalk. She was afraid in a new way, a quieter way. A way that had room inside it for something that was not quite fear at all, something that she was not yet willing to name, something that watched the serpent tattoo on his neck rise and fall with his breathing and counted. With a part of her brain she had not asked for an opinion, the slow, steady rhythm of it. She looked down at her own hands. The knuckles were white around the strap of her handbag. The handbag, absurdly, still held her keys to her one-bedroom in Harlem, her keys to the office on the 42nd floor, her keys to a life that, 10 minutes ago, had felt narrow and difficult, and entirely hers. The SUV slid through a yellow light without slowing. The driver, whose head she had not yet seen above the high partition, drove the way certain men drove only when they had been doing it for a very long time for a very specific person. The car was an extension of his shoulders. She made herself look up again. He was reading. He had returned to the tablet. The serpent on his neck moved, very slightly, every time he swallowed. The tail curled onto his collarbone, exactly where she would later, in a different room, in a different light, place the pad of her thumb. She did not know that yet. Her body possibly did. "Where?" she said. He did not look up. She cleared her throat. "Where are we going?" He turned a page on the tablet with one fingertip. "Lunch," he said. The word landed in the cream leather quiet like a single ice cube in a glass. "Lunch," she repeated. "You are pale," he said, still not looking. "Your blood sugar is low. Your hands are shaking. You ran on an empty stomach in heels for, I would estimate, 6 blocks. Lunch." She opened her mouth, she closed it. She looked at her hands. Her hands were, in fact, shaking. She had not noticed. "I have a job," she said. "It is 1:15 on a Thursday," he said. "Your firm closes the August desk on Mondays and Wednesdays. You will not be missed for 2 hours." She felt the blood leave her face for the second time that afternoon. "How do you—" she began. He turned a page. "You will tell me," he said, "when you would like me to answer that question." The SUV slid downtown. The skyline outside the tinted glass softened from steel into something older, brick and cast iron, fire escapes, water towers, the geometry of a city that had been a city before glass. Tribeca. Her brain, slow but functional, supplied the name. They were going to Tribeca. He spoke once more, to no one she could see, in Korean. His voice through the partition microphone was quieter than it had been to her. A single sentence. A response in the same language from the front. The car turned. She watched his profile. She watched the serpent. She watched, with a kind of distant horror, her own pulse begin to slow. 6 months ago she had been sitting across from Logan Hayes in a wine bar on the Upper West Side, and he had reached across the table and tucked a coil of her hair behind her ear, and she had felt her shoulders rise, all on their own, into the protective hunch she had been carrying ever since. The hunch had not come down, not at her desk, not in her bed, not in the elevator, not in the gym, not in restaurants when waiters approached too quickly from behind. She had walked around for 6 months with her shoulders an inch and a half higher than her skeleton wanted them. Sitting next to a man whose driver had just sealed her into an armored vehicle in the middle of Manhattan, her shoulders, traitorously, were coming down. She closed her eyes for one beat. When she opened them, he was watching her. He had set the tablet face down on his thigh. His eyes, those weather radio eyes, were on her face with a kind of attention that she had never, in 29 years, been looked at with. It was not appetite. It was not appraisal. It was not the look of a man cataloging what he intended to take. It was the look of a man who had already decided, some time ago, and was now simply confirming that the decision had been correct. "What is your name?" she said. The corner of his mouth lifted again, the same small movement as before. "Cha Jun-so," he said. He said it the way her mother said the names of saints, cleanly, without garnish. "Jasmine Brooks," she said, before she had decided to. "I know," he said. The 2 words landed somewhere between her ribs and stayed there. She did not, this time, ask how. The SUV slowed. They were turning onto a cobblestone street she half recognized, the kind of street with 1 bistro and 1 boutique, and otherwise nothing but tall doors and discreet brass plates. Light fell through the wrought iron fire escapes in long, bright bars. The driver pulled to a smooth halt in front of a building of pale brick with no number, only a single black door with a brushed steel handle and a small camera tucked into the cornice above. The lock clicked once more. This time it was the doors releasing. Jun-so did not get out. He turned to her. He did not reach for her. He did not lean. He simply turned his body, fully, to face hers, and let the cream leather and the sandalwood and the soft padded silence of the armored car hold the space between them. "You can step out of this car," he said, "and walk to the corner. There is a taxi rank at the end of the block. I will tell my driver to give you cash for the fare and an additional sum to settle your nerves. You will be home in 20 minutes. You will never see me again. The man who was chasing you will, by tomorrow morning, no longer be in this city. That part is already done." He paused. "Or," he said, "you can come upstairs, eat something, drink water, sit in a room with a view of the river, and in 2 hours, if you wish, my driver will take you home, and you will never see me again, but you will know my name, and you will have eaten, and you will not have been alone in the worst hour of your year." He let that settle. "The choice," he said, "is yours. It is the first one I will offer you. I would like you to take it seriously." She stared at him. Outside the tinted window, the cobblestone street did nothing. A pigeon landed on a fire hydrant. A woman walked a small terrier past the pale brick building without looking up. The world, indifferent, kept moving. Inside the car, she could hear her own breathing. She could hear his. She could hear, faintly, the engine of the SUV idling beneath them like a large animal that had been told to wait. She thought about her apartment, her empty fridge, the 2 hours she would spend on her couch picking at the satin of this dress and trying to convince her hands to stop shaking. The texts from Logan that would start within 40 minutes and not stop until midnight. The voicemail her boss would leave on Monday morning. The way the hunch in her shoulders would, the second she crossed her own threshold, come right back up. She thought about the moment Logan had drained of color on that sidewalk. She thought about the click of the lock. She thought, very briefly, about the smile. She set her handbag on her lap. She smoothed the satin over her knees with a hand that was, she noticed with a kind of dispassionate curiosity, no longer shaking. "Upstairs," she said. Cha Jun-so nodded once. He did not look surprised. He did not look pleased. He looked, very precisely, like a man whose reading of the weather had been correct. He opened his door first. He stepped out onto the cobblestones, his shadow long in the early afternoon light, the serpent on his neck momentarily catching the sun and flaring matte and black against the open collar of his shirt. He moved around the back of the SUV, unhurried, and Jasmine watched through the rear window as he came, and as he came she understood for the first time, properly, how tall he was, how broad across the shoulders the black shirt had to work to be, how the rolled sleeves cut against forearms that did not belong to a man who sat behind tablets for a living. He reached her door. He opened it for her. He held out one hand. His palm was wide. His fingers were long. There was a single small old scar on the knuckle of his index finger, the kind of mark left by a piece of glass 30 years ago. She looked at the hand. She looked up at his face. She put her hand in his. His fingers closed once, briefly, around hers, and the warmth of his palm went up her arm in a single clean line that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the part of her brain she had been instructing, for 6 months, to shut up. He helped her out of the car. The cobblestones were uneven under her thin heels. He noticed. He did not say anything. He simply adjusted, by maybe 2 inches, the angle of his arm, so that the back of her hand rested against the inside of his sleeve as they crossed the sidewalk, and the small adjustment meant her balance was perfect, and she did not stumble. The black door of the pale brick building opened from the inside before they reached it. A man in a dark suit, narrow, polite, did not look at her face. He stepped aside. The lobby beyond was quiet, lit by a single low pendant, walls of brushed limestone, a private elevator with no buttons. Junso guided her into the elevator with the same small adjustment of his arm. The doors closed. The elevator began to climb without anyone pressing anything. In the brushed metal of the elevator wall, Jasmine caught the reflection of the two of them, the liquid gold satin against the cream interior of his sleeve, the serpent at his throat. Her own face, flushed back into color, lips slightly parted, the hunch in her shoulders gone. She did not recognize the woman in the reflection. She suspected, with the small clear part of her brain that had been quiet for 6 months and was now, slowly, starting to speak again, that she was going to. The elevator rose past the discrete floors of the building, past the offices that had no signs and the apartments that had no doorbells, climbing toward a triplex with a view of the Hudson that she had not yet seen, into a room she had not yet entered, toward a porcelain lunch that had been set for 2 before either of them had left the curb on Park Avenue, and as the elevator climbed the sandalwood from the car still clung to her hair, and the warmth of his palm still lingered on the back of her hand, and somewhere in Midtown, Logan Hayes was already on a plane he had not booked, paid for by money he did not understand, and the city above them, indifferent and bright, went on being a city, and Jasmine Brooks, in liquid gold, rode upward in silence beside a man whose name she had known for less than 4 minutes and whose face, she suspected, she was not going to be able to stop seeing for a very long time. She thought irrationally about her grandmother. Her grandmother had a saying she had repeated every Sunday after church, leaning over a plate of collards with the same finger she used to point at the television when politicians lied. "The Lord does not slam doors, baby. The Lord locks them. So you stop pulling." Jasmine had not thought of that sentence in 11 years. It surfaced now, in a private elevator climbing a building with no number, and it surfaced with the small, unwelcome clarity of a bill that had finally come due. She glanced sideways at Junso. He was watching the floor indicator. His profile, in the warm pendant light spilling down from the elevator ceiling, was a clean, dark line against the brushed limestone. The serpent at his throat sat absolutely still. His breathing was so even it was almost not breathing. He looked like a man who had been waiting in elevators his entire adult life and had developed, somewhere along the way, the ability to stop waiting and start simply existing, the way certain trees existed, the way certain rivers existed, without any sense of time pressing on the edges. She made herself stand a little straighter. She was a senior M&A analyst. She had walked into rooms in worse circumstances than this. She had walked into rooms wearing less armor than this. The satin, at least, fit. The satin, at least, was hers. She would eat the lunch. She would drink the water. She would sit in a room with a view of the river, and she would let her shoulders come down a 2nd inch, and she would, before 2 hours had passed, ask the question, whose answer she already half suspected. "How long," she would ask him, Have you known my name? The elevator slowed. The doors began, very softly, to open. The doors began, very softly, to open. And the noise of the avenue rushed back in like water finding a broken seal. Horns. A delivery truck reversing somewhere down the block. Jasmine stepped out into the glare of Manhattan midday, and her gold dress caught the sun like a slow flare across the asphalt. She kept her chin tucked. She told herself she was fine, that Logan was 20 floors up shouting at an empty elevator bank. But the body does not believe the mind in moments like this. Across the street, the black armored SUV waited at the curb. Tinted windows, polished chrome. The kind of car she always ordered when she was tired and wanted the world to leave her alone. She did not check the plate. She did not check the app. Behind her, she heard the lobby door swing. She crossed. A yellow cab honked. She did not slow. Her sandals struck the asphalt in quick, precise clicks. She reached the door. Her thumb found the handle. It opened smoothly, almost lazily, as though it had been waiting. She slid into the back seat. She pulled the door shut behind her. The thunk of it was deep and final, a sound like a vault settling. The street noise vanished. The horns vanished. The shout that might or might not have been her name vanished. The interior of the SUV swallowed her whole, and for one long second she sat in the new silence with her eyes closed and her chest heaving, and she thought, simply, I made it. Then she opened her eyes. The interior was wrong. The first thing she registered was the smell, not the standard pine air freshener of a hired car, not the lingering ghost of someone else's perfume. Sandalwood. Warm, dry, expensive sandalwood. The kind that did not come from a hanging cardboard tree, but from something burned slowly in a small ceramic dish, somewhere far above this street. Under it, faint leather. Under that, the cold, metallic edge of new electronics. The second thing she registered was the upholstery. Cream, not the dark synthetic of a rideshare, but pale, supple, hand-stitched leather, the color of fresh butter, fitted seamlessly along the door panels and across the console. The ceiling above her head was the same cream, quilted in a low diamond pattern, lit by a thin strip of warm light running the length of the cabin. The carpet under her sandals was thick black wool. The third thing she registered was that she was not alone. He was sitting in the seat directly beside her. She had not seen him when she dove in. Her head was turning before her brain had finished deciding to turn it, and her eyes were finding him in pieces. A forearm first, tanned, dense, the sleeve of a premium black shirt rolled 3 precise folds below the elbow, a discreet Swiss watch on the left wrist, the bezel matte, a hand, long fingers, square knuckles, resting on a slim black tablet across one thigh. Her eyes climbed. A shoulder, impossibly broad, the shirt's seam strained against it without rumpling. A chest, deep, the top 2 buttons undone, the dark V of the collar revealing skin, and the lower curve of something black and patterned she could not yet read. A throat. And on the left side of that throat, climbing out of the open collar in fine black scale work, the lower end of a tattoo, a coiled tail looped onto the collarbone, the body of a serpent rising, a dragon's spine. The lines were tight, deliberate, old. She could not see the head. The head disappeared up under the jaw. She kept climbing. A jaw, sculpted, angled like something cut from stone with a single careful blade. A mouth, calm, faintly amused. High cheekbones. A straight exact nose. And then the eyes. The eyes were the part that stopped her breath. They were almond, dark, almost black, and they were not looking at her. They were looking through the tinted window past her shoulder, with the kind of patient interest a man might give to weather. The brows above them were straight and dominant. The hair, deep black, was combed fully back from a high, clean forehead, settling in a thick, natural wave at the nape. He had not flinched when she entered. He had not turned. He had not even tightened his grip on the tablet. He was sitting in the exact composed posture of a man who had been sitting that way before she arrived, and would be sitting that way long after she left, except she had the cold, clean intuition, settling slowly into her chest, that she was not going to be leaving. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Outside, on the sidewalk she had just crossed, a flash of black leather caught the corner of her eye. A white tee, dark jeans, white designer sneakers breaking too hard on hot concrete. Logan. Coming out of the lobby door, head whipping left, head whipping right, hand cupped above his brow against the glare, looking for the gold of her dress in a city that was not currently providing any. She froze. For the space of one heartbeat she thought, I have to get out, and for the space of the next heartbeat she thought, I cannot get out, and for the space of the third she thought, very quietly, very precisely, I am in the wrong car. The man beside her did not move. He did not even glance at her. He simply continued looking past her, through the dark glass, out at Logan, and his mouth did the smallest thing a mouth can do and still be said to have done something. The corner of it lifted, less than a smile. The opening of one. Outside, Logan turned. His eyes scanned the row of parked vehicles at the curb. They passed over the black SUV, paused, came back again, and then, very slowly, she watched his face from inside the tinted glass. She watched the precise moment his expression changed. It happened in stages. First, the irritation of a man who had lost his quarry. Then, the dim confusion of a man noticing something familiar in his peripheral vision. Then, the soft, awful dawning of recognition. His gaze traveled the length of the SUV, and then through the tint, somehow through the tint, as though he could feel, rather than see, who was sitting inside it. The color drained out of his face in a single slow tide. She had read that phrase her whole life in cheap thrillers, and had never quite believed it. She believed it now. His skin went the gray-white of old paper. The arrogant tilt of his chin collapsed by half an inch and did not recover. His shoulders, which had been wide and squared with the certainty of a man who had spent the last 40 minutes shoving past tourists in the lobby of her building, dropped a full breath downward. His hand, the one that had been shading his eyes, fell to his side. He took one step back. She watched it. He took a second step back. His mouth opened slightly. No sound came out of it that she could hear through the armored glass, but she could read the shape of it, and the shape of it was not her name. The shape of it was not a curse. The shape of it was the small, involuntary syllable of a man recognizing a face he had been hoping was a rumor. He took a third step back. He was now against the wall of the lobby behind him. His shoulder blades met it. He pressed himself flat against the limestone as though the wall could be persuaded to absorb him. And then he did the thing she would remember for the rest of her life. He looked away. He pulled his gaze off the SUV with the desperate effort of a man pulling his hand off a hot stove. He turned his head sharply, found a point of fascination on the far corner of the avenue, and committed to it with the absolute concentration of a child pretending not to see his own father in a store window. He did not run. He did not move at all. He simply pretended, with every fiber of his arrogant body, that the black SUV did not exist. Jasmine stared. She had known Logan for 3 years. She had watched him scream at maitre d's. She had watched him pin her wrist against the kitchen island and laugh when she winced. She had never, in 3 years, seen him afraid. She had seen him afraid now. Beside her, very softly, the man with the tablet exhaled. It was almost a laugh. Almost. The corner of his mouth lifted a degree further. He did not look at her yet. He was still watching Logan be a wall. And then, with the same slow precision he had used for everything else, he turned his head. It was the smallest motion, a 2-inch rotation. The black hair caught the warm cabin light. The tattoo on the side of his throat shifted as the tendons moved, and for one clean second, she saw the curve of the serpent's body climbing up out of his collar before the angle of his jaw hit it again. His eyes met hers. She had been ready for many things in her life. She had been ready for the cold, bright rooms of M&A war games where men in $3,000 suits tried to break her over conference tables. She had not been ready for this. His eyes were not predatory. They were not hostile. They were not even particularly curious. They were calm. They were calm in a way that human eyes were not usually calm. Calm the way a deep lake is calm. Calm the way the surface of Mercury is calm. And the longer she looked into them, the more she understood, in a slow, cold, downward way, that the calm was not absence of danger, but the presence of so much of it that nothing more needed to be performed. The corner of his mouth lifted again. This time it was a smile. A real one. Small, unhurried, faintly, almost imperceptibly, indulgent. "Good afternoon," he said. His voice was low. The English was clean, the consonants precise, the vowels carrying the soft round shape of a man whose first tongue was elsewhere. He did not raise his volume, he did not lower it. He spoke at the exact pitch a man speaks at when he has never in his adult life had to repeat himself. She tried to answer. Her throat would not allow it. She closed her mouth. She opened it again. Her hand, the one not gripping the small leather handbag in her lap, drifted toward the door handle on her side. He saw the drift. He did not stop her with words. He did not stop her at all. He only watched, with the same indulgent half-smile, the way a man watches a child reach for a stove the child has not yet learned is hot. His gaze tracked her fingers to the chrome, and then it returned, mildly, to her face. She did not pull the handle. Some animal part of her, older than thought, recognized that the door was not going to open. Not because it was locked yet, she could hear no lock, but because the man beside her had decided, somewhere in the long quiet of the last 40 seconds, that she was going to be staying. Her hand drifted back to her lap. It settled there. She watched it settle. She had the strange, dissociated sense that she was watching someone else's hand on someone else's gold dress. "You are out of breath," he said. It was not a question. It was an observation, the way a doctor might note a symptom. He set the tablet down on the seat between them, screen dark, and folded his hands loosely on his thigh. The watch on his wrist caught the cabin light. The lower coil of the serpent on his throat shifted again as he tilted his chin a fraction. "Take a moment," he said. She did not know what else to do. She took a moment. She breathed in. The sandalwood filled her sinuses. She breathed out. The window beside her remained dark. Outside it, Logan was still pressed against the limestone, still pretending to study the far corner of the avenue, still refusing with his entire body to acknowledge that a vehicle was parked 30 feet from him. A passing tourist asked him a question. He shook his head violently without turning. The tourist moved on. "He is going to stand there," the man beside her said, conversational, "for approximately 4 more minutes. Then he will walk south. He will not take a taxi. He will walk south for 8 blocks before he stops to look behind him. He will look behind him 3 times in those 8 blocks. Each time he will see no one following him, and each time he will be more afraid than the last." She turned her head toward him slowly. He was not looking at her. He was looking at Logan again, the way a man watches a small fire he has set to test whether the wind will carry it. "How?" she said. Her voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. She tried again. "How do you know that?" He did not answer. He simply tilted his head, very slightly, in the direction of the window, as if to say, "Watch." She watched. 4 seconds later, Logan peeled himself off the wall. He did not look at the SUV. He kept his head angled hard to the right. He began to walk, stiff-legged, south down the sidewalk. His hands found his pockets. His shoulders curled inward. He did not take a taxi. The first taxi of the afternoon glided up to the curb beside him with its light on, and he stepped sideways to avoid it as though it had teeth. She felt something tilt in her chest. She had spent 40 minutes running from this man. She had spent 3 years before that flinching at the sound of his step in her hallway. She had spent 6 months after the breakup, checking the corner of her building twice before unlocking the door. And he was walking away. Not because she had outrun him, not because security had escorted him out, because the man sitting beside her, whom she did not know, whose name she did not know, whose face she had not seen until 90 seconds ago, had been visible through a piece of tinted glass. She did not know whether to laugh or to be sick. She did neither. She sat very still in her gold dress, with her small handbag in her lap and her sandals together on the thick black carpet, and she breathed the sandalwood air, and she thought, with the strange clean clarity that arrives only in the middle of catastrophes, that she had made a mistake. She had made a very, very specific mistake. She had gotten into the wrong car. The man beside her tilted his head back toward her. The serpent on his throat caught the warm strip light. His eyes, dark and almond and impossibly composed, settled on her face with the patient interest of a man who had been waiting for her to arrive at this conclusion and was pleased to see she had not been slow about it. "Better," he said softly. He did not specify what was better. He did not have to. The color had begun to return to her cheeks. Her breath had begun to slow. The animal panic that had filled her chest from the elevator to the sidewalk had ebbed into something else, something heavier and quieter, and far more dangerous, and she could feel it settling at the base of her throat like cooling honey. She lifted her chin. Some core of her, the part of her that ran merger rooms for a living, the part that had walked into negotiations against 3 senior partners and walked out with the deal, stirred under the silk of the dress and lifted itself onto its feet. "This is not my Uber," she said. She had aimed for cool. She had aimed for the flat, precise tone she used with men who needed reminding of something. What came out was steadier than she expected, which surprised her, and which, judging by the small, fresh lift at the corner of his mouth, surprised him too. "No," he agreed. "I should get out." "You should." She did not move. He did not move either. The driver up front, whose face she still had not seen, had not turned around once during any of this. His shoulders, square in a dark suit jacket, remained facing the windshield. His gloved hands rested at 10 and 2 on the wheel, as though waiting for an instruction that had not yet been given and that he was confident would be given when the moment was correct. The man beside her, and she registered, in the corner of her mind, that she had begun to think of him as the man beside her, as though that were already his title, as though no other naming were available to her, picked up the tablet again. He did not turn it on, he simply held it loosely across his thigh, the way another man might hold a folded newspaper. Outside, Logan was gone. He had vanished into the southbound flow of pedestrians the way a small stone vanishes into a river. The sidewalk where he had stood pressed against limestone was empty. A street vendor was wheeling a cart of mango slices into the space he had occupied, as though the city itself had already forgotten him. The man beside her watched the empty patch of sidewalk for one further beat. Then, with the same slow deliberation he had used for everything else, he turned his full attention onto her. "Jasmine Brooks," he said. The sound of her own name in his voice did something to the air in the cabin. She had not told him her name. She had not, in the long blurred minute since she had thrown herself into the back seat, said a single syllable he could have used to identify her. Her handbag was closed in her lap. Her phone was inside it, dark. Her ID was inside the phone case. No card was visible. No monogram. Nothing. He said it the way a man pronounces a word he has been practicing in private. Carefully. With pleasure. The J soft. The S carried just a fraction longer than necessary. She felt the small fine hair at the back of her neck lift. "How?" she said for the second time, and again she could not finish the sentence, because the question had too many possible endings and she did not yet know which one she most needed answered. He did not answer the question she had not finished asking. He set the tablet on the seat between them. He turned his body a degree further toward her, so that his shoulder rotated against the cream leather, and his knee, large and patient under the dark fabric of his trousers, came to rest within an inch of hers without touching. The cabin felt suddenly smaller. The sandalwood felt suddenly closer. "Senior M&A analyst," he said. "Conversational. Park, Hollis and you. 47th floor. Promoted 9 months ago after the Brennan Vertex deal. You take your coffee black with 2 raw sugars from the cart on 51st and Lexington, not the one in your lobby. Your handbag," and his eyes flicked to the leather in her lap, "is 2 seasons old. You bought it the week you signed the lease on the apartment you no longer live in." She stared at him. Each sentence had landed exactly. The promotion. The coffee cart. The bag. The apartment. The one she had walked out of 4 months ago with 2 suitcases, while Logan banged on the bedroom door behind her. Her mouth was dry. "Who are you?" she said. The flatness of it surprised her. It was the voice she used in negotiations. The voice she used when she did not yet know the answer and needed the other side to fill the silence. He smiled. The smile reached, very slightly, his eyes. It changed nothing about the calm in them. It only made the calm appear, for one short moment, to be pleased. "My name," he said, "is Cha Jun So." He let the name settle. He did not elaborate. He did not offer a title, a company, an industry. He gave her the name and waited, with the patience of a man who was confident the name itself would do enough work, to see what her face would do with it. Her face did almost nothing. The name meant nothing to her. She had not spent her 31 years in the kind of rooms where that name was spoken aloud. She knew the names of merger lawyers and hedge fund principals and the senior partners at 3 rival firms. She did not know the names of the men whose money those people sometimes, very quietly, helped move. He saw the nothing in her face. He was not disappointed. If anything, the small pleased thing in his eyes deepened a fraction. as though her ignorance were itself a kind of confirmation he had been hoping for. "You do not know the name," he said. It was not a question. "Good, good," she repeated. "It is better, in the beginning," he said, "to meet a man before you meet his reputation. The order of those two introductions tends to determine everything that follows." She did not know what to do with that sentence. She filed it. She had the sense, already, that she was going to be filing many of his sentences and returning to them later, the way she returned to clauses in a contract whose full weight only revealed itself on a third reading. Outside, the driver shifted, just barely, in his seat. Not enough to be a movement, enough to be a readiness. The engine, which had been idling so softly she had not registered it, settled into a slightly deeper note. Junso did not look at the driver. He did not give any signal she could see. But the driver, who had been waiting for something, received it. The transmission slid, smoothly, into drive. She felt the SUV begin to ease forward from the curb. The motion was so smooth she almost did not notice it. The cream leather seat did not jolt. The carpet did not shift. The strip of warm light along the ceiling did not flicker. The world outside the tinted glass simply began, very slowly, to slide. Her hand went, by reflex, to the door handle. He watched it go. He did not stop her. She tested the handle. She did not yank, because she was still, somewhere under the panic, a woman who knew that the wrong move could turn a bad situation into a worse one, and she did not yet know which kind of situation this was. She lifted the chrome a single careful inch. It moved. She blinked. It moved freely. The mechanism was not engaged. The door was not locked. Whatever the man beside her was, whatever the SUV was, whatever the small, precise smile on his mouth meant, the door was at this exact moment unlocked, and she could, if she chose to, pull the handle the rest of the way, push her shoulder against the cream leather, and step out onto the moving asphalt of a Manhattan Avenue at midday in her gold dress and her nude sandals. She could. She did not. She held the handle at the 1-inch lift. The SUV continued to roll. A delivery cyclist passed in a blur of orange jacket and ringing bell. She held the handle and she did not let go, and somewhere in the long second of that holding, she understood that the choice had already been made by some other part of her that had walked into this cream leather cabin and was not prepared to walk back out. He watched her hold it. He did not smile this time. He did not need to. The corner of his mouth had settled into the quiet shape of a man whose afternoon was unfolding exactly as he had planned for it to unfold, and who was a patient enough man to enjoy the unfolding without rushing it. The SUV gathered, very gently, a little more speed. The driver eased into the second lane. Somewhere ahead, a light turned green that she had not seen turn red. She let go of the handle. It settled back into the door with the smallest of clicks. Junso's gaze moved from her hand, slowly, up to her face. He did not say well done. He did not say anything at all. He only reached, with the same calm precision he had used for everything else, toward the polished console between their seats. His index finger settled on a small recessed button she had not noticed. He did not press it yet. He looked at her instead. He let the moment stand. He let her see his finger on the button, let her understand what the button was, let her understand that he was about to press it, and that he was telling her, in the only way a man like him told anyone anything, that he was about to. His eyes were calm. The serpent on his throat was calm. The sandalwood in the air was calm. Outside, the city continued to slide. She held his gaze. She did not look down at the button. She did not look out at the receding sidewalk. She held the dark almond steadiness of his eyes with the steadiness of her own, because some part of her, the part that ran merger rooms, the part that had walked out of the apartment with 2 suitcases, the part that had survived Logan's hand on her wrist and the hallway, and the elevator, and the gold dress in the glare of the sun, had decided, very quietly, that she was not going to be the first to look away. The smallest thing happened at the corner of his mouth. Approval. He pressed. The console responded to him the way well-trained things respond to the only hand that has ever fed them. A single short tone. A green dot blinking once in the polished black panel. From somewhere deep in the chassis came a low, precise mechanical thunk, 4 bolts dropping into place in the same hundredth of a second. The doors locked, not slammed, locked, like a safe deciding it was time to keep what was inside. Jasmine felt the sound travel up the cream leather and into the base of her spine. She did not jump. She had stopped jumping 6 minutes ago. Somewhere around the moment her brain had finally accepted that the man beside her was not going to behave like a man at all, but like weather. Cha Jun-so did not look at the panel. He had not looked at it when his thumb touched it either. His attention had stayed where it had been, on the slim black tablet across his thigh, on a column of Korean characters scrolling slowly upward under a Manhattan skyline rendered in fine gray wireframe. He let the lock finish settling. Then, with the same patient economy he had used for everything else, he slid the tablet shut, slipped it into a narrow leather pocket on the inside of the door, and turned his head. The full weight of his calm found her face. She had seen calm before. Boardroom calm. Senior partner calm. The kind cultivated over 30 years of billable hours. None of that prepared her for this. His was not learned. It was structural. It had no edge to push against. No surface where panic could get a fingernail in. It was the calm of deep water, and she understood with sudden physical clarity that everything she had been doing for the last 6 minutes, every micro-adjustment of her breath, every careful angle of her knees, had been the small frantic paddling of something small on the surface of something very, very large. "You got into the wrong car," he said. His voice was lower than it had been earlier, softer, in the way an unsheathed blade is softer when it is finally at rest. The English was unaccented. The Korean cadence underneath gave the consonants a clean architecture, each word built to load-bearing standard before being released. But the right life. The phrase landed in the cabin and stayed there. Jasmine's lips parted. They did not produce sound. The driver, invisible behind the smoked partition, had not yet touched the gear lever. The SUV remained at the curb. Outside, 12 feet of cream leather and reinforced steel away, Logan Hayes was still alive, still standing on the sidewalk in his black leather jacket, still holding the diminishing certainty of a man who had been a king for 90 seconds. Jun-so's eyes did not leave her face. "That man out there," he said, and the slightest inclination of his chin gestured through the tinted window without breaking the line between his gaze and hers, "will never bother you again." She watched his mouth shape the next words with the same delicacy a craftsman uses to set a stone. "Because now you are my exclusive passenger." The Korean word he used inside the English sentence, dokjom, hung very quietly between them. He had not translated it. He had let it sit. She did not speak Korean. She did not need to. The texture of the syllables carried it across without help. Exclusive. Sole holder of a thing. The kind of word merchants used about diamond contracts and gallery rights. The kind of word her own merger desk used about pharmaceutical patents. He had selected it the way other men selected ties. Outside, Logan finally moved. It was not the kind of movement she had ever seen him perform before. Logan's body, in her experience, occupied space aggressively. He pushed it forward into rooms. He angled it into doorways. He used it like a low, quiet thread in elevators. Now it was doing the opposite. He had taken one step back, then a second, then a third, his sneakers scraping on grit, his right hand drifting up to his sternum and pressing flat there as though to verify a heartbeat that had become suddenly theoretical. He had seen the tattoo. That much was obvious from his face even through the tint. The angle of Jun-so's seat, the open collar of the black shirt, the way the light fell across the cream interior, had given Logan exactly one frame of visibility before the doors had sealed. One frame had been enough. The fine black scale linework descending the left side of the Korean man's neck, the curl of the amugi tail just visible at the collarbone, the dragon that did not need to introduce itself in any city that mattered. Logan's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound made it out of him that Jasmine could hear, but she could read his lips against the muffled glass, and she watched his mouth shape, with the small voice of a small boy. Oh God. He took a 4th step back, then a 5th. He collided with a woman carrying a coffee cup. The coffee splashed across his white t-shirt in a dark Rorschach. He did not register it. He kept walking backward until his shoulder blades found the brass and granite facade of the building behind him, and then he simply pressed himself to it, flat, the way small animals press themselves to bark when something with wings passes overhead. Jun-so smiled. It was not a smile of cruelty. It was a smile of mild, private amusement. The kind a chess teacher offers a child who has finally noticed the rook. It moved through his mouth. did not reach his eyes, lingered in the soft creases at the corners of his lips, and was gone again, before the muscles fully resolved. In its place returned the absolute serenity that was his default condition. The greater the danger, the calmer he became. She understood now that she had walked into the dead center of a great deal of danger, and that he had been calm for a long time. He lifted his left hand to the smoked partition between the cabin and the driver. He tapped twice. The taps were unhurried. The driver, whose silhouette had been a still gray suggestion behind the glass for the entire encounter, responded with a single fluid motion. The gear lever shifted. The engine, which had been idling so quietly she had not noticed it, deepened by exactly 1 register. The SUV slid away from the curb. Logan, against the granite wall, did not move. Jasmine watched him slip backward through the rear window as the avenue began to feed past them. He stayed pinned, his mouth was still open. One of his hands was still on his sternum. The other had begun, almost involuntarily, to make the small repetitive gesture of a man patting himself down for car keys, wallet, phone, dignity, none of which would be found. The crowd flowed around him. A woman in white sneakers stared. A bicycle messenger glanced and pedaled on. He looked, in the receding frame, like a coat someone had hung on a wall and forgotten. Then the SUV turned a corner, and Logan Hayes was gone. He was gone so completely it was almost obscene. 3 years of him. 3 years of careful exits and small lies, and her sister's narrowed eyes across Thanksgiving tables. 3 years of his hand finding the small of her back in elevators with a possessive weight she had stopped naming. 3 years of waking in her own apartment at 3 in the morning, because he had a key, and a corner had been turned and a window had moved and now there was only Park Avenue. Indifferent. A Chase Bank, a Starbucks, a flower stand. As if he had never been. Jasmine closed her eyes. She did not mean to. The eyelids simply lowered, a body system pulling rank. She inhaled. The sandalwood and the leather and the cold edge of new electronics. She exhaled. She listened to the engine and to her own heart and tried to determine, with the cool clinical part of her brain that had built her career, which of the two was beating faster. When she opened her eyes again, Junso had turned to face the front. His hands were folded loosely in his lap. He was giving her the cabin. He was giving her the silence. He was not pretending the last 60 seconds had not happened, and he was not crowding her with them. He was simply waiting, the way a host waits for a guest to finish reading a card she had handed him. She found her voice in the second drawer down from where she usually kept it. "Who are you?" She had meant it as a question. It came out as a statement, as if she had reached a verdict before she had heard the testimony. He turned his head toward her. The serenity did not waver. "My name is Cha Jun-so," he said. He let the syllables stand. He did not embellish. He did not offer a card. He did not extend a hand. The introduction in this car, she understood, was not a formality. It was a transfer of weight. "I run a network," he said. "Among other things, the legitimate one is private acquisition of art and antiquities. The galleries in Cheongdam-dong, 2 in the Upper East Side. Probably you have walked past them. The one with the obsidian door on Madison, the one above the Carlyle." His voice did not change pitch when he listed them. "You may have seen my name on a wall, in very small letters." She had. She placed it immediately. The obsidian door, the catalog with the silk end papers. She had been there once for a client cocktail. The owner had not appeared. He had been, she remembered, in Seoul. "And the rest," she said. He inclined his head a quarter inch. The acknowledgement was scrupulous. "The rest is more complicated." He did not lie. She had been waiting for the lie. She had been bracing for it. She watched him not give it, and the absence of the lie did something disorganizing to the inside of her chest. He was the most dangerous man she had ever sat beside, and he was, in this moment, the most truthful. "And you waited," she said. Her own voice surprised her with its steadiness. The M&A analyst had stepped forward. The woman in the gold dress had handed her the chair. "You waited for me to get in." He considered the question. He did not answer it. He did not answer it in a particular way, with a particular precision, like a man laying a stone on a board and watching to see what she would do with it. "You got in," he said. The SUV took another corner. The light through the tint shifted from gold to the cooler gray of a side street. Somewhere, a siren passed in the opposite direction, headed back toward whatever Logan was doing against his granite wall. Jasmine looked down at her hands. They were folded in her lap. She had not given them the instruction to fold. They had done it on their own, the right thumb resting in the cradle of the left palm, a posture she used in negotiations when she wanted the other side to underestimate her composure. The ring finger of her right hand was bare. The band Logan had given her on her 27th birthday, the band she had stopped wearing 19 months ago, was at the bottom of a porcelain dish on the second shelf of her closet in her apartment on the Upper West Side. She could see it from here, in her mind. She watched her thumb move once across the empty place where it had sat. "My phone," she said. He nodded. He had been waiting for her to say it. "In your bag," he said. He did not look at the small, structured leather handbag at her feet. He knew where it was without looking. "Battery still has 31%. I have not touched it. I have not asked anyone to touch it. You can call anyone you wish." He paused. "I would prefer that you did not call him." The him was not Logan. The him was a possibility he had read in her face the way he had read everything else. A senior partner, a brother, a sister, somebody who might come into this car, into this story, who would change the math of what he was offering. She did not say anything. He did not insist. He returned his gaze to the front. He waited. Outside, Park Avenue had given way to a quieter cross street. The brownstones rose. The trees thickened. The driver knew where he was going. The driver had known since before she had crossed the street. Jasmine made a decision. She was an analyst. She had built a 6-year career on the discipline of making decisions while terrified. She breathed out through her nose. She set the panic on a shelf beside the empty ring finger and the porcelain dish. She turned her shoulders 1 degree more toward him. "You said exclusive passenger," she said. "I did." "That is a translation." "It is." "Of what?" He looked at her. The almost unsettling calm of the almond eyes received the question and held it as if testing its weight in his palm before answering. "Of dokyeom," he said. "It is a commercial term in Korean. It is the term we use in auction contracts when a buyer secures the sole right to a piece. No other bid is permitted to be entertained. The seller is bound. The piece is removed from the floor." He let that sit. In English, the cleanest equivalent is exclusive, and the dirtiest equivalent. He almost smiled again. He did not let it complete. "There is no dirty equivalent," he said. "There is only the word." She did not believe him entirely, but she believed him more than she would have believed anyone else in any other car in any other minute of her life. He had used the term and meant it as he had defined it. He had also chosen the term over 100 other available terms, and the choice itself was a kind of dirty equivalent. She filed both facts and let neither contaminate the other. "And what is the piece?" she said. He looked at her for a long second. "The piece is not a piece." He did not need to say the rest. The grammar of the sentence had finished itself in the air between them. The piece was not a piece because she was not a piece. He had used the structure of an auction contract on her, and at the last possible syllable he had refused to complete the metaphor. He had let it break open. He had let her stand in the breaking. Something hot moved across the back of her neck. Not fear exactly, not anger. A third thing, undescribed, lit and electric. "You don't even know my name," she said. He answered before the last consonant had cleared her mouth. "Jasmine Brooks, 29, Senior Associate, Mergers and Acquisitions, 8 months from the partnership vote. Reed Hollingworth Bay, 22nd floor of the building you came out of. Hofstra undergraduate, Columbia Law. Younger sister, Aaliyah, 2nd year of medical residency at Mount Sinai. Mother in Newark, retired teacher. Apartment on West 87th, lease renewed in March. Coffee at the Joe on Columbus, oat milk, 2 sugars, every weekday morning between 7:40 and 7:50. The man on the sidewalk has had your spare key for 19 months and has used it 11 times, 4 of those after you told him not to." The cabin became, briefly, the inside of a sealed jar. He had not raised his voice. He had not made the recitation feel like a threat. He had delivered it the way a doctor delivers a chart, with neutrality, as a courtesy, to establish that he was the kind of man who already knew. He had also, in the last sentence, set down a number that none of her friends knew and that only one other person could have known, the number 11, the 4 times after she had told him not to. She did not ask him how he knew that. The question would have insulted them both. "You have been," she said carefully, "watching me." He did not deny it. He did not pretty it. He inclined his head in the same quarter-inch acknowledgement he had used earlier. The honesty was, in its own way, more unsettling than a lie would have been. A lie she could have negotiated against. The truth simply sat there. For how long? He did not answer that one. He looked at her, and something in the silence said later, and something else in the silence said, "You will not like the answer," and a third thing in the silence said, "You will also not be sorry." She decided she did not want the answer right now. She put it on the shelf beside the ring finger and the porcelain dish. The SUV turned again. The streets grew narrower. The buildings grew older. They were going downtown. They were going west. Tribeca, she registered, distantly, the analyst in her keeping track of every variable as a matter of habit. Somewhere with old cast iron and discreet doormen, and the kind of penthouses you reached by a private elevator that opened directly into the apartment. He spoke again, more gently now. "I am going to take you to my home." She did not flinch. She had stopped flinching. She watched the words arrive and saw, with the part of her mind that read contracts for a living, the careful absence of certain other words. He had not said apartment, and he had said home. He had not said I would like to. He had said I am going to. He had not said you have a choice. He had not said you do not have a choice. He had walked the sentence with the precision of a man who knew exactly which planks would bear weight. "You will be a guest," he said. "You will not be a prisoner. You will be given a room. You will be given clean clothes if you want them. You will be given lunch. The door of the room will not lock from the outside. The door of the apartment will be opened for you any time you walk to it." He paused. "I would prefer that you stay for one meal before you make a decision about anything else. After the meal, if you wish to leave, the driver will take you anywhere in the city. Your apartment, your sister, your mother, Newark. He will wait for you to be inside before he drives away." She studied his face. She was looking for the seam. She had built her career on finding seams. There was none. The offer was clean. The offer was, in the strange new physics of this car, fair. "And if I stay," she said. He met her eyes. "If you stay, we will have a conversation." "About what?" He almost smiled the third time. He did not allow it. "About the rest." The rest. The complicated rest. The thing that lived under the legitimate galleries with the obsidian doors. The reason Logan Hayes had pressed himself to a wall like a child hiding from weather. The reason the imugi descended the left side of his neck. She felt the heat at the back of her neck move forward across her collarbones and settle, low and bright, somewhere under her sternum. It was not fear. Fear had been a different animal 6 minutes ago. This was the thing that came after fear, when the body had already accepted the situation and had begun, against its own warnings, to be interested. "Why me?" she said. He looked at her for a long time before he answered. "Because 6 months ago," he said, "we sat across a deal table, 18th floor, the one above yours. You did not see me. I was in the secondary room, behind the glass. The principal on that side was my legal proxy. You handled the buy side. You broke a covenant the senior partner on your team had been told to leave alone. You broke it cleanly. You broke it without anyone realizing it was broken until the closing. You walked out at 11:47 at night carrying a paper coffee cup. You stopped on the corner of 53rd and waited 2 full minutes for a yellow cab when the car service the firm had ordered for you was idling at the curb. You did not get into the car the firm had paid for." He paused. "That was when I noticed you." She did not move. She did not breathe. She felt, with absolute clarity, the architecture of a decision being slid under her without her permission. He had remembered the coffee cup. He had remembered the corner. He had remembered that she had not gotten into the car the firm had paid for, and he had read in that small refusal an entire interior life she had not known anyone else had seen. "And then," he said quietly, "I waited." The SUV slowed. It was turning into a discreet driveway between 2 cast-iron buildings. A wrought-iron gate, automatic, was already rolling open. Beyond it, the underground entrance of a building that did not advertise itself with signage. "Today," he said, "I was not going to act. Today was supposed to be another day of waiting, but the man on the sidewalk accelerated the timeline. So I made a decision. And you, Jasmine, made one too." He turned his head, and the full almond calm landed on her. "You got into the wrong car. The SUV slid into the cool dim of the underground garage. The daylight died behind them in a slow, polite fade. A line of black town cars rested against the far wall. A private elevator, brushed steel, waited at the end of a corridor of soft amber light. She looked at him. He looked at her. The lock disengaged with the same single short tone it had used to engage. The doors stayed closed. He was not going to open hers for her this time. He was going to make her open it herself. She let the silence stretch one more breath. She thought of her mother in Newark. She thought of Aaliyah at Mount Sinai. She thought of the porcelain dish on the second shelf of her closet. She thought of the 11 times and the 4 times after she had said no. She thought of Logan against his granite wall. She thought of the word dokyom. Then Jasmine Brooks, 29, senior associate, 8 months from the partnership vote, reached for the handle of the door, and she pulled it open herself. The dim amber light of the garage came in across the gold of her dress. It caught on the satin and threw a slow, soft flare along the seam of her thigh. She set one nude sandal down on the polished concrete, then the other. She stood. She smoothed the dress at the hip. She did not look back at him. She did not have to. She heard him step out behind her, unhurried, deliberate, the way patient men step out of cars when the work has only just begun and the night ahead has agreed, at last, to belong to them both. The lobby breathed around her like a cathedral that had decided, very quietly, to keep her secret. Pale travertine ran from the doors to a long reception desk carved out of a single block of black walnut. 2 arrangements of white orchids stood at either end of the desk, each so perfectly groomed they looked almost rude. A doorman in a charcoal suit lifted his chin when he saw Junso, then lowered it again, the kind of greeting that wasn't a greeting so much as a confirmation. Jasmine felt the cool air settle against the back of her neck where the satin dress had stuck during her run, and for the first time in nearly an hour, her shoulders dropped without her permission. She did not turn around. She heard him close the distance behind her in 3 measured strides. His shadow arrived at her left side before he did, and then he was there, the cuff of his black shirt brushing the air near her wrist, close enough that she felt the warmth of him, and far enough that no one watching could call it a touch. He nodded once toward the desk, and the doorman lifted a small card already prepared, sliding it across the walnut without a word. "Miss Brooks," Junso said, gently, "your key for the residence." She stared at the card. Her name had been printed on it. Not handwritten in haste, not scrawled on a sticky note, printed, in a quiet serif that matched the building's small bronze plaque outside, as if the building had been expecting her since morning, as if her name had been resting in a drawer somewhere, patient, waiting. "You had this made," she said. "I had it updated." "From what?" "From a blank." She took the card. It was heavier than a hotel key. Brushed metal, slightly warm from someone's careful hand. She slid it into the small leather bag at her hip and turned to look at him. The lobby light caught the lower edge of the Yamugi tattoo at his collar, the curl of the dragon's tail resting just above his clavicle, ink so black it seemed to drink the gold around it. He let her look. He did not perform calm, he simply was. "Elevator?" he said. "Elevator," she answered. They walked the length of the lobby together, and she became aware of her own footsteps, because his made almost none. The doors at the far end were brass, lacquered to a soft sheen, and they opened the moment he stopped in front of them, as if the building itself recognized the rhythm of his breathing. Inside, the cab was lined in dark-figured walnut and a single panel of bronze with a discreet keypad. He did not touch the keypad. He pressed his thumb to a small unmarked square below it. The doors closed without sound, and the cab rose. "You don't ask which floor," she said. "There is only one." "Of course there is." He smiled then, the first real smile of the day, not the cool one from the SUV. It changed his face for a half-second, made the corners of his eyes soften, and then it was gone again, tucked away like something he did not give out to many people. She felt her own mouth answer it before she had decided whether she wanted to. The doors opened onto a private vestibule. No corridor, no neighbor's door, just a square of pale limestone, a tall vase of branches the color of bone, and beyond it, an opening framed by black steel beams, through which the entire Hudson River announced itself in one long sheet of light. She forgot to breathe for a beat. The room past the threshold ran the full width of the building, floor-to-ceiling glass on 3 sides, The river to the west already silvering toward late afternoon. The wedge of New Jersey low and warm against the horizon. The floor was white oak, oiled to a soft mat, the kind that swallowed footsteps rather than echoed them. A long open kitchen on the right side was clad in honed dark marble. A library wall on the left held more books than her parents' entire house, organized by something that was clearly not alphabetical. There was art, but the art was quiet. A charcoal study of a woman's bare back, a small Korean ceramic moon jar on a column lit from below, a single oil painting of a snow-covered orchard that she would later learn had not been seen by the public in 80 years. "You can take your shoes off if you'd like," he said, "or keep them on. The floor is forgiving. My feet are killing me." "Then take them off." She bent and slipped the heel straps over her ankles and stepped out of the nude sandals onto the oak. The wood was warm, heated from below. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh, because of course it was heated. Of course the floor of a Tribeca triplex would be warmer than her own apartment in February. Of course this was the kind of life that had decided cold feet were optional. She walked 2 steps toward the river view before she remembered to look back at him. He was watching her, not predatorially, not with the leer Logan would have aimed at her in the same posture. He was watching her the way a man watches a piece of music he has waited a long time to hear in a good room. "Why am I here?" she asked. It was the 3rd time she had asked some version of the question since the SUV. She wanted the answer to change. Because the alternative was leaving you on a sidewalk where a man in a leather jacket had already decided your name belonged to him. Junso said, "I dislike that grammar. I'm not a sentence. No, you are the verb. That is the problem he has." She had no immediate answer for that. She turned back to the windows. Down on the river a single sailboat was tacking south, its sail catching the angled sun and turning briefly into a wedge of pure white. She watched it for a moment, because watching it was easier than watching him. "I need to sit down," she said. "Yes." He gestured toward a low sofa the color of unpolished pewter that ran along the inner wall, deep enough to swim in, piled with 3 pale linen cushions and a folded cashmere throw, the color of bone china. She sank into it and felt the day arrive in her body all at once. The run, the lock click, the hours in this man's car becoming hours in this man's home. The sour memory of Logan's grip at her wrist that morning. The sour memory of Logan's color draining at the SUV window an hour later. Her hands started to tremble. Not violently, just enough that she pressed them between her knees and watched them like they belonged to someone else. Junso did not comment. He went to the kitchen, opened a low cabinet, and returned with 2 glasses of water and a small porcelain bowl of salted almonds. He set them on the low table in front of her, sat down at the far end of the sofa, an arm's length away, not closer, and waited. "Drink the water," he said, "then eat 3 almonds. 3. Salt and water, in that order. Your body has been running on adrenaline since this morning. It will start to crash in about 20 minutes if you do not give it something to hold. Are you a doctor now? I am a man who has watched a great many people come down off fear." She drank. The water was cold and clean and tasted very faintly of cucumber and of something mineral she could not name. She ate 3 almonds. He watched the river while she did it, not her, the small kindness of giving her face back to her while she put herself together. "Talk to me," she said. "About what?" "About anything that isn't him or me. Just give me 5 minutes of words that aren't about today." He considered. Then he said, "There is a kiln in Gyeonggi-do that has been firing the same clay for 11 generations. The clay comes from a hillside 2 kilometers from the workshop. The grandmother of the current master used to make porcelain spoons for the royal household. When she was dying, in 1979, she asked her grandson to bring her a single unfired bowl from the workshop. She held it on her chest for an hour and gave it back. He fired it the next day. It is the moon jar on the column behind you." Jasmine turned and looked at the white round vessel glowing softly under its discreet light. It looked, suddenly, less like decoration and more like a held breath. "Why is it here?" she said. "Because it is mine, and because someone should look at it." "You bought it." "It was given to me." "By whom?" "By the grandson. He was old. He did not want it to go to a museum where no one would touch it. And you touch it. Every morning." She let her head fall back against the linen of the sofa. The ceiling of the room was higher than she had registered before. paneled in long planks of the same warm oak, with a single line of recessed bronze fixtures that gave off light the temperature of late candle. She felt the floor's warmth seeping up through the soles of her bare feet and into her calves. Somewhere very far away, in a part of her brain that was still on high alert, an alarm was still ringing about the fact that she did not know this man, that the door behind her had locked itself with that same private click of the SUV, that there were no neighbors on this floor, and that her phone had no signal she had bothered to check. But the alarm had gotten quieter. It was being outvoted, slowly, by the warm floor and the moon jar, and by the way he had told her to eat 3 almonds without making it a joke. "You're being careful with me," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you are exhausted and because frightened people make decisions they regret. I do not want any of your decisions today to be regretted, including the one to come up here, especially that one." She closed her eyes for a beat. When she opened them, a woman she had not seen before was standing at the edge of the kitchen. 40, maybe 45, neat black hair gathered low at her neck, soft gray linen tunic, soft gray trousers, soft gray shoes. The woman bowed her head a quarter inch toward Jasmine and waited. "This is Miss Han," Junso said. "She manages this residence. She has prepared a place where you can shower and change if you wish. There is a robe. There is also a closet of clothing in your approximate size, never worn, tags still attached, if you prefer something other than what you arrived in. Nothing is required. Lunch will be ready in 40 minutes regardless of what you choose to wear to it. You keep a closet of clothes in my size. I keep a closet of clothes in several sizes. Today, yours is one of them. That should bother me more than it does. Tell me when it begins to bother you and I will have it emptied." She almost laughed. The laugh came up against the wall of the day and turned into a long, slow exhale instead. Miss Han, still patient at the kitchen edge, lifted one open palm in the direction of a hallway that ran east, away from the river view, toward what Jasmine assumed was the bedroom wing. 40 minutes, Jasmine said. 40, he agreed. She rose. Her legs took a moment to remember they were hers. She followed Miss Han down a corridor lined with more books, more small ceramics, a single black and white photograph of a child standing barefoot in a courtyard that she would later learn was Junso at 6, the only photograph of him in the entire residence. They turned into a guest suite that was not a guest suite so much as an apartment within the apartment. A sitting area, a wide bed dressed in white linen, a wall of closed cabinetry, a bathroom of pale stone with a deep tub already filling itself, somehow, with hot water that smelled of yuzu and cedar. "Take whatever you need," Miss Han said. Her English was soft, careful, accented with something Jasmine could not place. "There are no cameras in these rooms. There is a lock on the bathroom door and on the bedroom door. The locks are yours. He will not approach." "Thank you." "There is a phone on the desk. It is connected. It does not record. If you wish to call anyone, call. If you wish to leave, the elevator will take you down. The key card in your bag will let you back in if you change your mind. It will work for 30 days. 30 days. He told me 30. Jasmine stood in the middle of the room with the day finally arriving in her shoulders, in her jaw, in the small of her back, and she pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes for a long second and did not cry. Miss Han closed the door behind her with the same quiet click as the elevator and the SUV, and the click was, this time, a release. She took off the liquid gold dress and laid it across the back of an armchair like an animal she had skinned and did not yet know what to do with. She stepped into the tub. The yuzu rose around her. She slid under the surface until her ears went underwater and the world became the sound of her own pulse, slowing. When she came back up, she was a different woman by exactly the amount that a hot bath in a private bathroom in a Tribeca triplex can change a woman in 22 minutes. Her hands had stopped trembling. Her shoulders had dropped 2 inches. Her jaw had unlocked. The bruise on the inside of her wrist where Logan had grabbed her in the morning had bloomed into a soft violet that she touched once and then decided to stop touching. The closet held what he had said it would. Cashmere, silk, soft denim, 3 pairs of low leather flats. Nothing flashy, nothing demanding. She chose a wide-legged ivory trouser in heavy crepe and a long-sleeved black silk tee that fell just below her hip. She left her hair down, the long body wave still damp at the ends. She put on the flats. She kept her own small gold hoops from the morning because they were hers, and because she wanted at least one thing in this outfit, to be a thing she had bought with her own money. She walked back down the corridor, and the river was even more gold now than it had been when she left it, the angle of the sun lower, the windows on the west wall doing what those windows had been designed at very great expense to do. He was at the kitchen island. He had taken off the watch and set it on the marble beside him. The cuffs of his shirt were still rolled to the forearm. He was slicing a peach with the kind of small, sharp knife that looked older than her grandmother. He did not look up when she entered, but the line of his shoulders relaxed half a degree, and she understood that he had been listening for her footsteps the whole time she had been gone. "Sit," he said. "Eat." The island had been set for two. Cold poached chicken in a sauce the color of pale jade, a small bowl of rice with a single black sesame seed in the center, a salad of bitter greens and slivered pear, a long white plate of 3 peaches he was cutting into careful crescents, and a smaller plate of paper-thin slices of cured ham the color of garnet. 2 glasses of cold white wine in stems so thin she was almost afraid to pick hers up. She picked hers up. "To the wrong car," she said. "To the right life," he answered. They drank. The wine was a Chablis so clean, it tasted like a stone someone had held in their mouth. She ate, he ate. They did not speak for several minutes, and the silence was not the silence of 2 strangers running out of things to say. It was the silence of 2 people who had decided, by some small unspoken agreement, that the food deserved to be tasted before it was talked over. When she set her fork down, he set his down too. "Tell me what you do," he said. "You already know what I do. I know your firm. I know your title. I know the names of the 3 deals you closed last quarter. I do not know what you do." She paused. It was a distinction she had not expected from him. "I find the seams," she said. "In a merger, 2 companies look like they're going to fit, and they almost never do. Everybody else is at the surface. The price, the head count, the press release. I'm underneath it. I read the contracts the way a tailor reads a jacket. I find the seams that are going to split when they put it on. Then I tell them where to cut new ones. You like the work. I love the work. I hate the men I do it for. Why? Because they all think they hired me for my smile." He set the knife down beside the peach plate, very deliberately, and met her eyes for the first time at this distance, at this height, across this island. "They hired you," he said, "because there is no one else in their building who can do what you do. Their smile metaphors are evidence of their inferiority, not of yours. You should consider charging more." "I do consider that." "Then charge more." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. The complication is that you have been taught to call it complicated. Charge more." She laughed. The laugh surprised her, a real one this time, surfacing without warning, low in her chest, and she put a hand against her sternum, as if to keep it from running off without her. He smiled at the laugh, the soft, brief smile from the elevator, and looked down at the peach again, as if that smile were a thing he was embarrassed to be caught wearing. "You speak Korean," she said. "Yes." "English." "Yes." "What else?" "Mandarin, French, Italian functional, Japanese conversational, Russian enough to insult someone in the right room." "How?" "My father believed that a man who could not be misunderstood in 5 languages could not be lied to in any of them. He hired tutors. I was an only child. There was time." "Your father." A small pause. He set the knife down again. The pause was not theatrical. It was the pause of a man choosing whether to tell the truth on a topic he had not yet decided to spend on her. "My father is no longer alive," he said. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Doesn't matter how long ago it was." He looked up at her, then with an expression she had not yet seen on his face. Something younger. Something the calm had been built on top of, and not over. It was there for less than a second, and then the calm closed back over it like water over a stone, and he picked up the knife and resumed the peach. "Tell me," he said, "about the worst meeting you have been in this year. That's a long list. Pick one." She picked one. She told him about a partner at her firm who had walked her through a draft term sheet in a glass conference room and stood close enough behind her chair that his cologne had landed on her shoulder, and she had not been able to breathe through her mouth for 40 minutes without him noticing. She told him about how she had still found the error in the indemnification clause, still saved the deal, still walked out smelling of his cologne and had washed the blouse twice and finally thrown it away. She told him because she had not told anyone else, not even the friend she usually told everything to, and because something about the man across from her had built a small clean room in the middle of the day where the telling could be set down without breaking. He listened. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he said only, "What is the partner's name?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me. It does not have to matter to you. I'm not going to give you his name." "All right. Thank you. For not pressing. For not pressing." He nodded once. He picked up his glass. He drank. He set the glass down. He said, "Your firm's representation of the Halcyon Briarcliff transaction is going to fall apart in the second week of November." She froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. The Halcyon Briarcliff merger was the deal of her year. The deal of her career, possibly. 18 months of work, 2 associates under her, 6 binders of due diligence on her desk, a signing target in early December. Nobody outside the deal team, nobody outside the firm, nobody outside a list of 12 names she could recite in her sleep should know the name Halcyon Briarcliff yet. She set the fork down very slowly. "How?" she said. "Because I am the buyer behind one of the holding companies on the Briarcliff side of the table. Not the official buyer, the buyer the official buyer reports to. That is not in any document I have read. It is not in any document you have read, because the lawyer who would have put it in the document was paid to leave it out by a man who works for me. He left it out poorly. There is a footnote on page 211 of the second supplemental schedule that will be noticed by someone at your firm in the second week of November, and the deal will pause for review. The pause will last 6 weeks. The pause will cost 3 of the principals on the Halcyon side their bonuses. I would prefer this not happen. I would prefer you find the footnote tomorrow." She stared at him. She stared at him for a long time. "You are telling me," she said slowly, "that you are on the other side of my deal." "Yes. And you are telling me to find the flaw in your own filing before the rest of my firm finds it." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I would rather lose 6 weeks of paperwork than have you spend the next 6 weeks discovering you were lied to in a room I controlled. The first would cost me money. The second would cost me you." The room went very still. She felt her pulse in her ears the way she had felt it underwater in the bath, slow, deliberate, present. The river was doing its long gold thing behind him. The peach on the plate was bleeding a small pool of clear juice onto the marble. The cashmere of the throw on the sofa across the room was doing nothing at all, and the man on the other side of the kitchen island was watching her, with the calm of a man who had just laid down, very gently, a knife with both edges sharpened, and was waiting to see which one she chose to pick up. "You knew who I was," she said. "Yes. Before today. Yes. Before the SUV. Yes. For how long?" He did not look away. "We will talk about that," he said, "but not over lunch. Lunch is for the deal. The other answer is for a later hour, when you have eaten and rested and decided whether you want it. Eat. Then we will go to my office and I will open the document and you will read page 211 yourself, and you will tell me what you would have me do." She did not move for a long second. Then she picked up her fork. She speared a slice of pear from the salad. She chewed it slowly. The bitter green underneath cut the sweetness of the pear, and the sweetness of the pear cut the bitterness back. And somewhere inside her, in the small clean room he had built without asking, the analyst that had been hiding under the frightened woman lifted her head and began, very quietly, to count seams. "Page 211, she said. "Footnote 12. Footnote 12. You will find it in 9 minutes. I'll find it in 6. He smiled. "The real one." He let it stay this time. "Then eat for 3 more, he said, "and we will see." She ate. She did not have to. She heard the river outside doing its old slow work, and she heard the building around her holding its breath, and she understood, sitting in ivory crepe and black silk in a Tribeca triplex across from a man whose tattoo she had not yet asked about, that fear had finished its shift inside her, and that something else, something with sharper teeth and a much steadier hand, had clocked in to take its place. The plates were cleared by hands she did not see. One moment the porcelain was in front of her, and the next there were only the empty rings the water glasses had left on the dark walnut, and a single uncut fig on a small dish, split open like a heart someone had forgotten to finish eating. Junso did not move. He had let her talk, and he had let her stop talking, and now he was watching her the way a tide watches a coastline, without hurry, with the simple certainty that eventually the shape of the shore would change. The chandeliers above them were not bright. They had been turned down at some point in the meal, until the crystal hung like a frozen rain over the table, and the light pooled mostly in their hands. The Hudson outside the long window was black now. Only the small red lights of a barge moved on it, like an injury crossing the night. Jasmine kept her hands where he could see them. She had begun to understand that this was a man who measured the world in small movements, and she did not want any small movement of hers to be misread. Between them, on the walnut, lay a thin folder. He had set it there himself, between the second course and the third, with the same care with which he had earlier set down a wine glass. It was a soft gray, the corners worn the way the corners of a private thing get worn. He had not opened it. He had only let it sit. And he had let her see, when he set it down, that the tab on the side read, in small precise letters, Bryce Halloway. She had not reacted. The fork had stayed in her hand. She had chewed, swallowed, said something about the salt of the capers, and watched the corner of his mouth lift by exactly the width of a hair. But now the plates were gone, and the folder was still there, and the fig sat split between them, and she could not pretend any longer that she did not know what those two words meant. Bryce Halloway was her deal. It was the deal she had been building for 19 months at the firm. The merger that had grown her name in the analyst's floor from the Brooks girl to Brooks. $62 million in restructuring. A private foundation with a board nobody Googled. A holding company in Luxembourg that her senior partner only ever referred to by its three-letter code. It was the deal that had put a corner desk under her elbow and a key card with one extra clearance level into her wallet. It was the deal she had carried home in her chest every night for a year and a half, until she had stopped being able to tell where she ended and the spreadsheet began. And it was sitting in a soft gray folder on a Tribeca dinner table, between her and a man whose tattoo she could see, in this light, descending under his collar like a slow black river. "Ask," he said. His voice was not loud. It rarely was. But it landed on the walnut the way a coin lands on glass, clean, with a small ring after it. She lifted her eyes from the folder. She made them meet his. The almond darkness of him gave nothing back. He was not gloating. He was not waiting to be impressed. He was simply present, the way a mountain is present at the edge of a road. "How long," she said. "How long have I known about the file, or how long have I known about you? Both." He considered that. He turned the stem of his water glass a quarter turn, then a quarter turn back, with the same two fingers, until it rested exactly where it had begun. "The file, 11 months, he said. "You, longer." She did not let her breath go out. And she let it stay where it was, in the bottom of her ribs, and she counted 3 slow heartbeats against it before she answered. "Why?" "Because Bryce Halloway is not Bryce Halloway." He said it the way one might say it is raining. No weight, no music, just the small flat fact of it. He reached for the folder then, and she watched his hand, the way she had watched it earlier in the day at the small bar in the library, when he had poured her water without asking. The hand was steady. The watch on his wrist made no sound. The cuff of the black Egyptian cotton shirt had been rolled cleanly to the forearm hours ago, and never adjusted. He opened the folder. He did not turn it toward her. He simply spread it where it lay, between them, so that both their angles could read it at once if she chose to bend her head. She did not bend her head. "The holding company in Luxembourg," he said. "The 3-letter code your senior partner uses, the one he calls KLM at the table and never on paper. What about it?" "It buys art." She made her face do nothing. "It buys a particular kind of art," he continued, still not looking down at the page. "Mid-20th century European, a few small bronzes, 3 illuminated pages from a 15th century book of hours that the Bibliothèque Nationale stopped looking for in 1971. A scroll out of a private collection in Daegu that the South Korean government still lists as missing. It buys them through your foundation. It moves them through 2 galleries on Madison and 1 in Cheongdam-dong. It cleans them in 8 months. Then it sells them to other foundations, which sell them to other foundations, until the provenance is long enough that no insurance company will ask a second question. The Hudson outside did its slow black work. A long way down on the river, The small red barge light slid behind a piling and reappeared, dimmer. "You're telling me," she said carefully, "that my deal is a laundry. I am telling you that your deal is my laundry." He let that sit. He did not smile when he said it. He did not lean in. He let the sentence stand in the middle of the table the way the fig stood, split and patient. Inside her chest, something rearranged itself. It was not panic. Panic had clocked out hours ago. It was a colder thing, an inventorying thing, the same instinct that had let her at 24 sit through a 6-hour due diligence with 2 general counsels and a forensic accountant, and never let her water glass shake. She was, she realized, taking inventory of 19 months of her own life. The late nights. The closed conference room with the senior partner and a man in a charcoal suit she had only met twice, who had nodded at her once in an elevator without speaking, and had not been on any org chart she had ever pulled. The off-book referral fees that had been explained to her, when she had asked, as structured patronage. The way her bonus had nearly doubled the quarter the Daegu scroll had moved, although she had not known there was a Daegu scroll, because at the time she had only known there was line item M7, a cultural asset realignment, for which she had built the tax shell. She had built the tax shell. In 3 working days, on a Bloomberg keyboard with a coffee going cold by her left hand, she had built the structure that had moved a stolen 15th century manuscript through 2 galleries and into a private collector in Connecticut. She had not known. That was the small mercy, but she had built it. Her hands were still on the walnut. She made them stay there. She made them lie flat. She made the gold on her wrist not make any sound. "My senior partner," she said. "Is mine," Junso said. The 2-word sentence opened under her like a trapdoor. She had worked under Marcus Thiele for 4 years. She had once cried in the bathroom after a meeting in which he had called her work almost adequate, and been told by him in the same doorway 6 months later, very quietly, that he had been wrong about her. She had thought, in some private foolish corner of her chest, that Marcus Thiele had built a ladder under her, that he was, in his cold, restrained way, on her side. Marcus Thiele worked for Cha Junso. She let the breath go out of her ribs then, slowly, through her nose. Through her teeth she let it go because if she did not let it go, she would have used it for something she could not take back. "How long?" she said again. Her voice was lower than it had been. "For Marcus, 14 years. Before me, long before you." "Then I am?" "What?" "You are the best analyst he has had in 9 years, Junso said. "That is true. Marcus does not lie about work. He does not have time. He saw you do the Halverson rebuild in your 2nd year, and he understood, by the 3rd page, that you could read the kind of map he could only draw. That is the only reason he put you on KLM. He did not put you on it to use you. He put you on it because no one else in the firm could carry the structure without breaking it. That is supposed to comfort me." "No," he said. "It is supposed to be honest. I have decided to be honest with you tonight, Jasmine. It is a decision. I want you to understand that it is a decision." The chandeliers buzzed very faintly above them, in the way crystal sometimes does when the air conditioning shifts a degree. She heard the building doing its small interior weather. She heard her own pulse behind her ear doing its work. "And 6 months ago," she said, "you decided to watch me." He did not blink. He did not deny it. The corner of his mouth did the small, almost thing it did when she had said something he respected. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you began to ask the wrong questions." "What wrong questions?" He turned a single page in the folder. He did not lift it. He simply slid it half an inch with one knuckle, so the page beneath it became visible. It was a printout, her handwriting in the margin, a red circle around a line item, a small word in her own pen, written sideways, that she remembered writing at 3 in the morning in March. "Why?" "This one," he said. She remembered. It was a third-party valuation on a piece called Untitled 1962. She had asked, out loud, in a memo, why a 1962 untitled work by a deceased mid-list painter had been valued at $4.1 million in a market in which his auction ceiling was $380,000. She had asked it as a joke. She had drawn the red circle as a joke. She had assumed, sliding the memo under Marcus's door, that he would laugh, and she would learn the answer, and the answer would be boring. Marcus had not laughed. Marcus had called her in, said the valuation had been a private appraisal by a Geneva specialist, the buyer a foundation with deep pockets, that she should consider the matter closed. She had considered it closed. She had walked out with the memo and thrown it in the recycling bin by the elevator, because she had been tired, and she had wanted to be home. She had not been able to remember, until this moment, that there had been a man in a charcoal suit standing at the end of the hallway, looking at her without expression, as she dropped the memo into the bin. "You watched me throw it away," she said. "I had a man watch you throw it away," Junso said. "It is not the same." "It is close enough. It is." She closed her eyes. Only for a second. She did not want to do it for longer than that, in front of him. When she opened them, the fig was still split between them on the small dish, and a single fly had come from some corner of the triplex she could not see, and was walking, with the unhurried impertinence of all flies, along the edge of one half. He moved his hand. It was the first sudden thing she had seen him do all day. He took a napkin, folded it twice, and brought the flat of it down on the fly so quickly that she did not see the fly die. He set the napkin aside. He did not look at it again. "I am sorry," he said. It took her a moment to understand that he was not apologizing for the fly. "For what?" she said. "For the fact that there is no version of this conversation in which you are not already inside the structure. You did not know its name, but you built 3 of its walls. You're saying I'm guilty. I am saying you are useful. Whether that makes you guilty is a question you will answer in a different room than this one. Tonight is not that room." "Then what is tonight?" He did not answer for a long moment. He looked, instead, past her shoulder, at the wall behind her, although she knew there was nothing on that wall except a single piece of unframed paper, a small ink drawing she had noticed earlier, of a tiger with no eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. "I was 22, he said, "when my father was killed in a parking garage under a hotel in Gangnam. There were 6 men in the car when we arrived. There were 3 when we left. My father was not one of the 3. He said it without ornament. The same flat fact, the same patient mouth. I had been studying economics in Tokyo, 3 weeks from a degree. I came back to Seoul that night, and I stood in a room with 11 older men who were deciding whether the Soryu would survive the week. I let them speak. When they had finished, I told them what we were going to do. Did they listen? No, I made them listen. She understood, sitting across from him, that the elaboration had occupied the next several years of his life, and that she did not yet have the right to ask for the chapter headings. I have been the head of the Signore Ryu for 14 years. In those years, I have killed 2 men with my own hand, ordered the deaths of 9, and prevented many more. I have moved approximately $4 billion through structures I built with men like Marcus Thiele. I have not married. I do not say this to be pitied. I say it because tonight is a room in which I have decided not to perform. Why have you decided that? Because you noticed the file. That's not a reason. It is the only reason. Almost no one notices, Jasmine. The people I sit across from at tables look at my face, my watch, the door behind me. They do not read the tab on a folder. You did. And you sat through 3 more courses without making me ask you what you had seen. In my world, that is not common. She let her gaze drop, finally, to the folder. She let her eyes move down the page, her own handwriting, her own red circle, her own 3 in the morning why. It looked, from this side of the table, like a small wound she had left in the world a year ago and forgotten about. He had been carrying it in a gray folder ever since. You said the lock clicked, she said, and her voice surprised her by how level it was, because I had gotten into the wrong car, but the right life. Yes, you meant this. I meant this. You meant, she said, that I was already inside. That Logan was a doorway, but not the door. I meant, he said, that you were already on a road I had been walking parallel to for almost 2 years. And I meant that I had decided, in the 3 seconds it took you to open the door of the SUV, that I was not going to keep walking parallel to it any longer. She thought about Logan then. She thought about the cheap leather jacket, the gel in the hair, the gray-blue eyes she had once told a friend at brunch were the eyes of a man who had never once in his life lost anything he had wanted to keep. She thought about how she had run from him this morning, and how she had thought, sliding into the back seat of the SUV with her heart in her teeth, that she had escaped him. She had not escaped him. She had walked past him, into a larger room, in which he was not even a piece of furniture. She lifted her eyes. Junso was watching her again. He had not moved from his chair. The collar of his shirt was still open by exactly the 2 buttons he had left it open all day, and the lower tip of the Imugi tattoo curled, in the low chandelier light, like a black brushstroke on his collarbone. "You said the deal is your laundry," she said. "Yes." "Then I want to see it." He did not react. His face did not move. But something behind his face, something deep, shifted in the way still water shifts when something passes far below. "All of it," she said. "Not the page in the folder. All of it. The chain, the galleries, the Daegu scroll, the man in Connecticut, the structure that I built without knowing I was building it. I want to see what it looks like when it is on one piece of paper. That is not a small request. You said tonight is the room in which you do not perform. I am asking you not to perform." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed the gray folder with 2 fingers, slowly, and slid it across the walnut until it rested directly in front of her. He left his hand on it for a beat longer than the motion required, and the beat said, without his mouth needing to, that he understood what he was handing her, and that he was handing her the rest of his life along with it. "You will not be able to unsee it," he said. "I have not been able to unsee anything," she said, "since this morning." The corner of his mouth did the small, almost thing again. He stood. He came around the table. He did not hurry. He did not loom. He walked the long way, around the back of her chair, with the same patience he had shown all day, and when he stopped beside her, his hand came to rest very lightly on the back of the chair, not on her, near her, the way a man tests the temperature of a room without entering it. "Open it," he said. She opened it. There were 31 pages. They were not in a language she had to translate. They were in the language she had been speaking for 19 months. Tax shells, holding tears, beneficial ownership routed through 6 jurisdictions she could recite in her sleep. The Daegu scroll was on page 11. Her own initials in Marcus's neat hand were at the bottom of page 17, beside a note that read, in English, "Structure by J.B., clean, recommend continue." She read it. She read all of it. She did not speak while she read. He did not speak while she read. The chandeliers held their soft buzz above them. The Hudson did its slow black work outside. At some point, the napkin on the small dish, with whatever was under it, was carried away by a hand she did not see, and the dish was carried away after it, and the fig too, and only the gray folder and her own hands and the slow turning of pages remained on the walnut. When she reached the last page, she closed the folder. She set her palms flat on it. She felt the cool of the cardstock through her fingers, and she felt, underneath that, the warm weight of a life she had not chosen but had, by every measurable structural standard, helped to build. She did not look up at him. "There's a hole," she said. "Where?" Page 23. The Connecticut Foundation. You're moving the scroll through a 501 Clantoin/charitable shell, and you're declaring the appraised value as donation. That works for the IRS as long as no one ever looks at the back-end resale. But the back-end resale on page 26 clears through the same KLM tier. If anyone at the Treasury runs the EINs side by side, you're not in tax court. You're in federal indictment by Tuesday. There was a long pause. It was the longest pause of the night. Then, very quietly, above her, she heard Cha Jun-so, Oyabun of the Seorei-ryu, the man whose father had been killed in a parking garage in Gangnam when he was 22 years old, the man who had walked around her chair and stopped 1/2 step away from her shoulder, begin to laugh. It was a small laugh. It was not for the room. It was almost only for himself. "Marcus said," he said, "that you would find that in under an hour. He was wrong. He was. I found it in 19 minutes. He laughed again, quieter this time, and the laugh did something to the air around them, the way a key turning in an old lock does something to the air of a hallway. The mask did not so much crack as it became, for a moment, a face. She let her eyes rise then. She let her eyes rise from the folder, up the open black of his shirt, past the curl of the imugi at his collarbone, to the almond dark of his eyes. He was looking down at her. He was not smiling anymore, but the laugh had left something in his face it had not had before, a kind of opening, a kind of permission, given not to her but to himself, the smallest internal nod of a man who had decided, on the strength of 19 minutes of work, that he was not going to be alone in this room any longer. She stood. She did not push the chair back loudly. She did not put any drama into it. She stood the way one stands when one has finished reading a contract one intends to sign. She turned to face him, and she found that he had not stepped back, and she found that the half-step between them was no longer the polite half-step of a host beside a guest, and she found, in a very small, distant corner of herself, that she was not afraid. Fear had finished its shift earlier in the day. The colder thing had clocked in, and the colder thing, she understood now, was not cold at all. The colder thing was hunger. She lifted her chin. She did not say anything. She did not need to. His hand came up, slowly. It came up the way the rest of him did things. The back of one knuckle, the index finger of his right hand, came to rest, very lightly, at the corner of her jaw, just below her ear. He did not curl the hand. He did not bring his palm in. He let one knuckle do all the work, the way a man tests the surface of black water before he commits to it. And she did not move away. She did not lean in either, not yet. She let him hold the knuckle there for a beat, and another beat, and a third, while the chandeliers buzzed above them, and the Hudson kept its small red light moving in the window, and somewhere in the room a clock did not tick, because the clocks in this triplex had been chosen, deliberately, not to tick. Then she lifted her own hand. She did not put it on his chest. She put it very lightly on his wrist. She closed her fingers around it. She felt the bone of him under the cuff, and the heat of him under the bone, and the small, calm pulse of him that had not changed at all since she had first sat down across from him in the back of an armored SUV at noon. She drew his hand the rest of the way to her face. He understood. He moved the half-step. His other hand came up to the other side of her jaw, and the two hands held her with the same quiet, measured precision with which he had folded the napkin earlier, and she tilted her chin, and he lowered his head, and the kiss, when it came, was not a kiss of imposition. It was a kiss of two people who had each, in the same instant, set down something heavy. It was mutual. It was necessity. It was the quiet click of two structures finding that they fit, on a walnut table, under low chandeliers, above a slow black river, inside a building that had been holding its breath since noon, and was, finally, allowed to exhale. She did not close her eyes. He did not close his. They kept looking at each other through it, the way two people kept looking at each other across a deal table when they were each, separately, doing the math and arriving at the same number. When he pulled back, it was only by an inch. His forehead rested against hers. His hands stayed where they were. His thumb, on the soft skin just under her jaw, made one small motion, once, and stilled. "Page 23, he said quietly, against her mouth. "What about it? You can fix it." It was not a question, it was not a request. It was a sentence offered the way a key is offered, flat across an open palm. She breathed in, she breathed out. The exhale moved against his mouth, and his did not flinch. The amugi at his collar caught the chandelier light once. Outside, very far down, the small red barge crossed the last piling on the river and slid into open black water, and kept going, and did not look back. The winter garden sat at the top of the triplex like a small glass cathedral, 3 walls of clear panels, a ceiling of the same. Beyond the glass, Manhattan held its breath in that early evening blue that came right before the lamps along the Hudson decided to wake. Jasmine stepped inside first. She wore a simple black silk slip dress that fell to mid-calf, no jewelry, her silky body waved loose down her back. Her feet were bare on the heated stone floor. She had spent the morning closing a clean restructuring of a Chelsea front gallery, and her body still carried the small, steady heat of a job done right. Jun-So followed her in. Black Egyptian cotton shirt, top 2 buttons open, the amugi tattoo low on his neck, catching the soft amber from the warm bulbs threaded through the orchid frames. Sleeves rolled to the forearms. The Swiss watch on his left wrist made a thin, dull glint when he moved. He carried 2 glasses of pale gold dessert wine in one hand. He set them on the low marble table between the 2 single armchairs at the center of the room, then crossed to the long planter of white phalaenopsis along the west wall. He touched one petal with the back of his knuckle. He did not press. He only checked that it was still alive. "You watered them this morning," he said. "I did. You always water them too early. They like me anyway." He gave a short, low sound that in another man would have been a laugh. From him, it was almost a confession. Jasmine sat in the closer armchair and folded one leg under the other. She picked up her glass. She did not drink yet. She watched him cross the room. He moved the way he always moved. Quiet, economical, as if the floor itself agreed with him on where his next step should land. He sat in the armchair across from hers. He set his forearms on the rests. He looked at her for a long second without speaking, the way a man looks at a thing he has finally been allowed to look at openly. "Tell me something true," she said. "Specify. Something I do not know yet." He did not pretend to think about it. He had been carrying it for a while. She could see that now, in the small, still way his jaw set, the way his shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch, as if a weight he had been balancing chose this moment to step off. "The SUV," he said. "What about it?" "On Madison." "What about Madison?" It was not parked there by accident. She brought the wine up to her mouth. She did not drink. She held it there. The cool rim touched her lower lip. Outside, a barge horn moved across the river, low and slow, then gone. "Explain," she said. He did, calmly, without performance, the way he did everything. "I had been watching you for 6 months." She set the glass down. "Define watching." "From a distance. From across rooms. From inside meetings you did not know I was attached to. From the back of cars that passed yours in traffic on Park. From the second floor of the auction house on 64th the night you came in with the Whitman Group to value a Vermeer attribution you correctly called a forgery before the third drink was served. I remember that night. I know you do. I did not see you. You were not supposed to." She let that sit. Her hands were calm on the arms of the chair. Her pulse was not. He noticed. He noticed everything. He did not press it. He let her have the second alone. 6 months, she said. 6 months and 3 days. The first time I saw you, you were sitting across a deal table on the 42nd floor of a building on 6th. You were the third chair on the buy side. Your principal was a man named Halbrook. He spoke too much. You spoke twice. Once to correct a multiple, once to refuse a number. You did not raise your voice either time. You did not need to. The room moved with you both times. I watched you do it. I watched Halbrook take the credit for it on the elevator going down. I watched you let him. That was the Cresswell deal. That was the Cresswell deal. You were not on the Cresswell deal. I was on the other side of the Cresswell deal. 2 layers behind the buyer. The art holdings inside the target were mine. She put her hand flat on the marble. Cool. Steady. She let her palm stay there until she could feel the slight echo of the river under the stone, the deep hum of the building, the small electric purr of the orchid lamps. That was January. It was January. You have been watching me since January. Since January 12th, a Wednesday. You wore a navy suit. You had a thin gold chain at your throat, with a small disc on it. You took your coffee black. You did not eat lunch. You walked back to your office in flat shoes and changed into heels at your desk. I know because I asked a man who knew, and he told me. Because he liked you and did not understand what he was telling. Who? Halbrooks Jr., the blonde one. He has since left the firm. You moved him. I did not move him. I removed the reason he had to stay. The post he wanted opened in Singapore. He took it. He is happy. He still does not know who he was speaking to. She breathed out, slow, long, through her nose. Her shoulders did not move. Her face did not move. Inside her chest, something old and small and used to running stood up, stretched, looked at the door, and sat back down. Why? Why what? Why watch? Because the first time you spoke at that table, I understood 2 things at the same time. The first was that you belonged in rooms 10 floors above the one you were sitting in. The second was that no one in your life was going to put you there. They were going to use you to climb and leave you on the landing. I had seen it before. I have spent 20 years moving men out of rooms they used women to enter. And the second reason, there is no second reason. There is always a second reason. He looked at her, almond eyes calm, straight dominant brows level. The chandelier light caught the emugi at his collarbone once and slid off. The second reason, he said. I wanted you, plainly, from the first sentence. Before I knew your name. Before I knew you were brilliant. Before I knew anything about you except that you were sitting in the wrong chair and were too quiet about it. I wanted you the way a man wants a thing he has spent his whole life building rooms for and has never been allowed to put inside one. That is honest. It is. It is also a confession to a crime. Watching is not a crime. In some countries it is. In some countries we are. She did not laugh. She let the corner of her mouth lift. He saw it. He did not smile back. He waited. Continue, she said. For 6 months I watched. I did not approach. I had no intention of approaching. I had decided already I would wait. For what? For the door. Define. For the moment when the ordinary world failed you. When the men in it made themselves unbearable. When the chair you were sitting in stopped fitting. I would wait for that moment, and on that day I would put a car on the street you walked down at the hour you walked down it, with the door unlocked, and I would be inside it, and I would let you find it on your own, because nothing taken is kept. Only chosen things are kept. You parked the SUV. I parked the SUV. On Madison. On Madison. At 11:46 in the morning. 3 meters past the corner of 68th. Black, unmarked. Identical to the model your firm used for client pickups. Identical to the model the application on your phone routinely dispatched. The driver had instructions to remain motionless behind tinted glass. The rear door was unlocked. The console lock was on a manual release at my left hand. I had been sitting in the back seat with the tablet for 40 minutes. 40 minutes? 40 minutes. I had been sitting in the back of that car at that curb on that block, at the hour you took lunch every Wednesday since February. You knew I would walk past. I knew you would walk past. I did not know when. I had been wrong on 6 other Wednesdays. I had sat in that car for 40 minutes on 6 other Wednesdays and watched you walk past on the other side of the street. And the door had stayed unlocked, and I had not opened it, and I had driven away. 6 other Wednesdays. 6 other Wednesdays. You waited for the door. I waited for the door. She closed her eyes for one full breath. She opened them. She picked up her wine. She drank. The dessert wine was cold and slow and tasted like a late peach. She set the glass down. Logan. Logan. You did not arrange Logan. I did not arrange Logan. I would not have. I do not require a frightened woman. I require a free one. Logan was an accident I did not engineer. He showed up across the street at 11:43. I saw him through the tint. I recognized him from the file. I had 3 seconds to make a decision. What was the decision? Whether to send him away. How? 2 men were 40 meters behind him on the sidewalk, on instruction to remain available. They could have walked him to a side street and explained the rest of his life to him in under 90 seconds. He would not have spoken to you. He would not have approached. He would have left the block and you would have walked past my car at 11:46 and the door would have stayed locked, and I would have driven away and tried again the next Wednesday. You did not send him away. I did not. Why? Because I watched you see him, and I watched your face, and I watched you run, and I watched you choose to come toward the car instead of past it. I watched you, in a fraction of a second, identify a black armored vehicle as safer than the man on the corner. And I knew that if I sent him away, you would walk past on the other side of the street one more time and we would not meet, because the door I had been waiting for was the one inside you, and Logan, in that one moment, was the man who opened it. He shortened the timeline. He did not write it. He was the catalyst. He was the catalyst. He was not the cause. The cause sat in the back of that SUV for 6 Wednesdays before you ever ran. She looked at him for a long time. He let her. He did not adjust. He did not lean forward to soften it. He did not lean back to seem casual about it. He sat the way he had sat from the beginning, calm hands on the rests of the chair, calm eyes, calm shoulders, the amugi at his neck catching the warm amber, and he let her decide what to do with the truth he had set down on the marble between them, like a piece of furniture she could keep or refuse. She picked up her glass, she drank again, she set it down, she uncrossed her legs, she crossed them the other way, she breathed in once. 6 months. 6 months. Of watching. Of watching. And on the day, you sat in a car with the door unlocked for 40 minutes. For 40 minutes. And before that, 6 other 40 minutes. 6 other 40 minutes. 280 minutes of waiting. 280 minutes of waiting. For a stranger. For you. You did not know me. I knew enough. You did not know my mother's name. Patricia Brooks. Born Patricia Wells, Charleston, South Carolina. School teacher, 3rd grade, retired the year before last. Lives at 31 Magnolia Lane. Drives a beige Camry. Goes to the 8 a.m. service at the Second Baptist Church on Calhoun Street. Calls you every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You have missed 2 of those calls in 3 years. You apologized for both. She did not respond. She could not. Her hands stayed still on the chair. Her throat moved once. You looked into my mother. I looked into the people you love. I did not approach them. I did not contact them. I did not place anyone near them. I did not need to. I needed to know that they were safe in the world you were currently in, because if they were safe, then any decision I made later could be a decision about you alone, and not a decision that dragged them. They are safe. Patricia is safe. Your brother Marcus is safe. Your Aunt Della is safe. The boy in Atlanta you sent to college on 3 years of paychecks you never told anyone about is safe. None of them will be touched. None of them will be approached. None of them will be used. Not by anyone in any room I have ever sat in. This is not a promise. This is a structural condition of the world we now occupy. The boy in Atlanta. No one knew about the boy in Atlanta. Not her mother, not Marcus, not Della. She had told no one. She had set up the wires from a private account, paid the tuition through a foundation she had created on a Tuesday afternoon 4 years ago for that single purpose, and never spoken of it to a living soul. He knew about the boy in Atlanta. She closed her mouth. She opened it. She closed it again. His name is Darius, she said finally. Yes. He turns 21 in November. Yes. He is going to law school. He is going to Howard. He has been accepted. He has not told you yet. He plans to tell you on Thanksgiving. She looked at her hands. They were perfectly still. She did not understand why they were perfectly still. You will not tell him I told you. I will not. You will not tell anyone. I will not. He is mine. He is yours. He is the only thing I have ever done that I did not let anyone know I had done. I know. And you knew. I know. Since when? Since March. She breathed out. The sound that came out of her was not quite a laugh and not quite anything else. It was the sound a woman makes when she finds out the thing she has hidden most carefully has been seen by exactly the right person at exactly the right depth and has not been touched, not used, not weaponized, only seen and protected from a distance she had not asked for and could not now resent because the protection had been competent and quiet and absolute. You watched me write the tuition checks. I watched the foundation pay them. I did not need to know more. I closed the file. I did not open it again. You closed the file. I closed the file. You watched the rest. You did not watch that. I watched what you would have wanted me to watch. I did not watch what you would have wanted me not to. You decided that for me. I did. You should not have. I know. You should have asked. I should have. I could not. I did not have you yet. You have me now. I have you now. Then next time. She looked up. She looked straight into him. Her chin was steady. Her voice was steady. The silky body wave fell forward over one shoulder. Next time. Next time. Ask. I will ask. Ask before you watch me. Ask before you close a file on me. Ask before you put 2 men 40 meters behind a man on a sidewalk. Ask before you decide which doors of mine you open from the other side. Ask before you sit in a car for 280 minutes deciding the shape of the rest of my life. You will not move a single piece of me again without asking. Do you understand? I understand. Say it back. I will not move a single piece of you again without asking. Good. She picked up her glass. She drank. She set the glass down with a small, definite sound on the marble. The wine was almost finished. Outside, the lamps along the Hudson had begun to wake one by one, a slow string of warm pearls stretching south toward the financial spires. He had not moved. He had not adjusted his shoulders. He had not lowered his eyes. He had taken the correction the way a man takes a correction from the only person on earth he has ever agreed in advance to be corrected by, and the calm in him had not cracked once, because it was not the calm of a man who hid things. It was the calm of a man who had finally been allowed to set down what he had been carrying alone. There is one more thing, he said. Tell me. The car on Madison was the second car. What was the first? There was a car on Lexington in February. Different model, different driver, different block. I sat in it for 40 minutes on a Wednesday in February. You walked past on the opposite sidewalk. The door was unlocked. You did not see it. I drove away. I told myself I would not do it again. I did it again. Every Wednesday. Different blocks, different cars, identical doors, until Madison. 7 Wednesdays. 7 Wednesdays. 280 was wrong. 280 was wrong. It was 320. 320. You sat in unlocked cars on 7 Wednesdays for 40 minutes each, waiting for me to walk past at an hour I might or might not walk past, on streets I might or might not walk down, with no guarantee that on any of those Wednesdays I would even see the car, let alone choose it. Yes, that is not surveillance. No, that is something else. Yes, name it. He did not look away. Devotion, he said. The word landed on the marble between them and stayed there. She held it. She turned it over inside her chest. She did not soften toward it. She did not harden against it. She let it be what it was. A man with 300 soldiers, 4 cities, a Cheongdam-dong gallery network, a Manhattan triplex, and a tattoo of a serpent dragon on his neck had sat in an unlocked car on 7 separate Wednesdays for 40 minutes apiece on the off chance she might walk past, with no plan to approach, no plan to speak, no plan to do anything except wait until the door inside her opened on its own, and on the 7th Wednesday it had, and he had let her find him, and he had not pretended otherwise, and now he was sitting across from her in a winter garden made of glass, on the top of a triplex above the Hudson, and telling her the count. She set her glass down. She stood up. She did not move toward him. She moved 1 step to the side and looked through the glass at the city. The lamps were all awake now. Long, warm chains of them down both rivers. The bridges hung with their own small constellations. The towers behind her reflected forward through the panels in cool, faint ghosts. He did not stand. She turned back to him. She crossed the small distance between the 2 armchairs. She did not sit in her own again. She put one knee on the arm of his chair, and then the other knee on the other arm, and lowered herself down into his lap in one slow, controlled motion, the silk slip dress riding up over her thighs, her palms flat on his chest where the cotton was warm, the amugi at his neck a finger's width from her mouth. He still did not move. His hands stayed on the rests. He waited. She brought her forehead down until it rested against his. She did not kiss him, not yet. She let her breath move against his mouth. He let her. "Next time," she said, very quietly, against his lips, with the lamps of the Hudson behind her, and the amugi tattoo a heartbeat from her mouth, and 320 minutes of unlocked doors behind them both. "Open the door yourself." His hands lifted off the rests for the first time since he had sat down. One came up the line of her back, slow, deliberate, until it found the nape of her neck under the heavy, silky body wave. The other settled at the small of her waist where the silk gathered. He did not pull her in. He held her where she had placed herself. "I will," he said. "Say it back. I will open the door myself." "Good." She closed the distance. The kiss was not the first. It was not the second. It was something else. It was the kiss after a contract had been read aloud in full and signed by both parties on the same line in the same ink, and it was slow because there was no longer anything to hurry, and it was steady because there was no longer anywhere else to be, and his calm did not crack under it because his calm had never been a wall. His calm had been a room, and she had been the only person in his life he had ever built it for. Outside the glass, far below, the small red barge that had passed the last piling an hour ago was already a single low point of light moving south past the statue, and behind it, the river was black and wide and going where it had always been going, and inside the winter garden, the 2 of them stayed exactly where they were, and the orchids along the west wall stayed alive in the warm amber, and the amugi at his collar caught the chandelier light once, and then once more, and then the lights in the winter garden dimmed on their own quiet schedule, down to the level the room kept after sundown, and the city outside the glass kept its long warm chain of lamps burning along both rivers, and neither of them said anything else for a long time. When she finally lifted her forehead off his and sat back, her hands still flat on his chest, she did not move off his lap. She stayed where she was. One more question, she said. Ask. The 7th Wednesday. Yes. If I had walked past. Yes. What would you have done? He looked at her. The almond eyes were very calm and very level, and the answer was already inside them before he spoke it. I would have come back the 8th Wednesday. And the 9th. And the 9th. And the 10th. For as many Wednesdays as it took. That is not a man. No. That is a season. Yes. You would have been a season. For you? Yes. She put her palm flat against his jaw. She felt the small movement of his pulse there. Steady, even. The pulse of a man who had never in his life been in a hurry about a thing he had already chosen. Then I will not make you wait through another one, she said. You will not have to. Good. She kissed him again, slower this time, softer. The kind of kiss a woman gives a man when she is no longer telling him anything because the telling is done. Below them, the Hudson kept moving south, and the lamps along the FDR kept their long, warm chain, and somewhere on the Upper East Side, a junior partner at a corporate firm picked up a closing memo from her desk and saw, for the first time, that the signature at the bottom was not hers anymore, and on Madison Avenue between 68th and 69th, the curb was empty of any black armored SUV, because there would never be a need to park one there again, because the woman it had been parked for was, at that exact moment, 3 miles south and 28 floors up in a winter garden made of glass, sitting in the lap of the man who had parked it, with her forehead against his, and the door, this time, finally, fully, deliberately, had been opened from the inside. Fade. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever run from the wrong man and landed in front of someone who already knew your name? Would you have the courage to sit beside that stranger and ask him to open the door himself next time? What would you trade your ordinary life for if the right hand reached for you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about protection, partnership, and forbidden love, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.